Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber. Alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we are going to be talking basketball, even though some of you may be thinking, holy crap, how about those Green Bay Packers? And how about them, Logan? What they did last night, Thursday Night Football, to the Washington Commanders. My Super Bowl pick against your Super Bowl pick out of the NFC, not to pick sides. It was another dominant win for Green Bay. They've looked incredible through 2 weeks. They've looked like very arguably the most complete team in football. Is there anything you want to say about this?
You took the Cowboys to the Super Bowl a year ago, bro.
Oh my God. Is it ever going to end? I'm just talking about the fact that the Green Bay Packers, who I said were going to be the best team in the NFC, have looked like clearly the best team in the NFC. And by the way, a lot of people were outraged by that take preseason. In fact, I didn't fully realize how outraged people were. I went back yesterday to look for some comment of somebody hating on me so I could say, guys, look, if you want to cash out and apologize right now, I'll allow it at a discounted punishment. If you wait the full year, the punishment will be far more brutal for doubting me and criticizing my football knowledge. Everybody hated it. Everybody hated I had the Packers at number 2 in my preseason power ranking. So God forbid, Logan, I just say they look amazing. God forbid, you got to bring up the worst take of my life for the rest of my life. Now every time we talk about basketball, if you say something that I don't like, I'm just going to say, remember when you said DeAndre Hunter was a top 15 player to build around in the NBA, Miles Turner over Domantas Sabonis?
Wow.
Yeah, buddy.
That was a take from like 5 years ago, bruh.
Well, we can open up all the skeletons in the closet.
Shit.
Frankly, I can't believe you did it again, but okay. Cling on to that. Cling on to that.
I don't know if the Packers are definitively the best team in the NFC. I think them and Philly are really, really close. But, yeah, I mean, Green Bay looks really good. Jaden also, I just thought, missed on some stuff last night. I didn't think Jaden played his best football game. Like, he was good, but he wasn't great. And then those missed field goals kind of came back to bite him on the ass. But I do put a little bit of that on Jaden as well for not getting him into better field position so those kicks were easier. Yeah, the Packers look great, though, and Jordan Love looks like a fucking world beater, and Marshawn Lattimore looks fucking washed.
This is what I said, Logan. I will say, you got missed kicks from both sides, but, like, this was never remotely close as a football game. In fact, the scoreboard of both these first 2 weeks, even though they're pretty dominant scores, sells short that, like,
I'm just saying
it was
that, I mean,
27-6 week 1 until garbage time. This game was 14-3 at half. It was 27-10 before a garbage time touchdown.
If he makes those kicks, it's like at least a one-possession game where maybe Jaden could have led down a drive to tie the game. I mean, it doesn't come to fruition, but
Green Bay misses a field goal too, so it evens out.
I know, but their guy missed 2 kicks, though.
It was an absolute ass-kicking, Logan, and you can cope all you want, but Green Bay Packers look like a juggernaut. You didn't move them up one spot in your power rankings after the Micah trade.
They dominated in the trenches. No, I didn't expect Green Bay to look this good. My thoughts on football and sports in general were permeable. I'm not glued to any of my takes. The Packers look like a top 3 team in football. Do you want head? Do you want me to give you some top, buddy?
What the hell? Dude, you just put me on the defensive when I just come out and say the Packers look great. And for the 42nd time, and we're in week 2 of the NFL season, you mentioned the worst take of my life, which was now well over a year ago. It's in the past. Leave it in the past. Or else I'm going to give you the same treatment. And I don't think you're going to like that. And right now I'm enjoying that the Packers look fantastic. They are just so exceptionally complete. Both sides of the ball, so well coached. Run game is great. The passing attack is more dynamic. Jordan Love's opening it the freak up. And the defense has a chance to be the best in football. Like, listen, I came into this offseason a little bit lower on the Lions, certainly lower on the Commanders compared to last year in the consensus. But these were 2 of the top 5 offenses in football. These were 2 of the last 4 teams standing in the NFC. And the Packers have neutered them, man. They have held them both to what would have been their worst offensive games in the entirety of last season. That's what they've done in the first 2 weeks of the year. So it's hilarious to me that, like, after week 1, some people were like, oh, this says more about the Lions sucking. And then after week 2, people are like, do the Commanders suck or are the Packers good? And it's like, well, if back-to-back weeks this team destroys teams that everybody thought was very good, that were in the divisional round of the playoffs last year, in the NFC title game for Washington, maybe the Packers are just insanely good.
If Green Bay gets home field advantage, I don't think I could pick another team to beat them. Like, they said that on the broadcast. The Commanders haven't won there since '88. Like, if it's snowing, like, I just think Lambeau's too big of an advantage to pick against. So, I mean, it might come down to whoever comes up with that 1 seed. But, I mean, through 2 weeks, I don't think there's been a team that's put better tape on the field. And obviously, we haven't seen everybody else play week 2.
Right.
But that, like you said, it was a great win against a a team that I think is going to make the playoffs. So, I mean, I can't remember who said it, but if this was college football, I mean, the Packers would be the number one team, I think, ranked in the country.
Absolutely. They feel like they're getting whatever they want on offense and defense.
And Jordan Love is just playing great. Yeah. I think the scheme is brilliant. I think the fact that they have Josh Jacobs to rely on is a huge get. The thing that's impressed me the most about Green Bay is their dominance in the trenches, though. Like, we kind of knew all about the explosive personnel that they've had. One, I think they can unlock Matthew Golden even more. I thought Love missed that touchdown pass to him. He underthrew him a little bit. Like, that could have broke the game wide open.
He had the other deep shot where he barely overthrew him. There were two potential explosive plays for Golden that just missed. But that speed, man, has game-breaking potential.
I mean, to give you credit and to give the Packers credit, they feel like Philadelphia did out the gates last year. And I know it wasn't immediate, but like that dominance that we saw from Philadelphia in the regular season, that's what I feel like we're getting a taste of Green Bay right now. So, yeah, they've looked dominant through 2 weeks, man. I don't know how you couldn't be confident about your pick. And then the Commanders have just got to get better push, bro. I thought the play calling was bland. They didn't get push up front. And that's the strength of this team. If they can't dominate in the trenches, they're just not going to be as successful as they were last year.
Well, Micah is obviously just so ridiculously impactful. His ability to just live in the backfield. And Connerly has had some issues with a couple tough matchups on that Washington O-line. But it's the totality of Green Bay's defense. Already, they were making the most out of their talent last year. Now you add a destructive pass rusher, guy who easily could win Defensive Player of the Year this year, a guy who makes a strong case for being the best pure pass rusher in football. And he just takes you up another level. But the run defense has been so excellent. The coverage has been so good. They're just stacked, man. I'm wildly impressed by the Green Bay Packers, and they are absolutely meeting my lofty preseason expectations. All of that to say, that's not what we're talking about today. We'll give you guys a little bit of a taste on that, but we'll have a full, massive Sunday night show as we always do. Today, though, we are ranking the top 10 offensive players in the NBA. We got off to a little bit of a contentious start here, Logan. I mean, tempers flared a little bit. Next thing I knew, you were offering me fellatio. I didn't know how to respond to that. I couldn't tell was it a real offer.
I feel like we built up some really nice sexual tension.
Well, that's a great thing to have going this early into the pod. So let's keep that up, Logan. Let's keep that going. Before we get into this, as always, we have to honor the honorable mentions, the toughest cuts. I know you and I both briefly discussed, we didn't name any names, but we both had some great difficulty deciding on the last couple spots for this list. Who are you going to lose sleep over leaving off, Logan?
Dude, I know we say this on basically every ranking that we did. This is, I think, the toughest ranking that we've done in this NBA offseason. Like, I spent a cool couple of hours trying to figure out who the hell was going to end up in my 9 and 10 spot. I end up leaving off Devin Booker. I think he's probably the first guy that ends up off my list. I mean, he's a complete scoring guard. He's got elite footwork. He's gotten better as a ball handler and a playmaker. The way I viewed this is I'm starting a team blank with one guy, and there's nothing else filled out of my roster. It is just one dude. And that's how I tried to gauge everybody here. If I'm starting with a blank canvas, I don't have any other teammates on my roster. I'm just looking at them offensively. And I thought Book had enough of a bit of a down year for parts where he barely misses my list. And then I thought the other toughest cuts for me were Donovan Mitchell and Karl Anthony Towns.
Fascinating.
I wanted all three of them here. The on-off numbers with Cat are really great, especially offensively. The Knicks were 7 points better with Cat on the floor than off. He's a fucking weapon at his size and skill ability. Ultimately, for Cat and Donovan Mitchell, I held their playmaking limitations a little bit against them. Donovan and just sometimes sort of his tunnel vision, and then Cat, just some of the jankiness and some of the inconsistencies with him is what keeps him off my list. And then D-Book, it was the fact that he had just a bit of a down year. But I have no issue if you would argue any of those guys in your 10 spots. That being said, damn, man, I feel bad leaving any of those guys off. But that's what makes these lists interesting, man. You got to keep it to 10. So I've got my list solidified.
Well, color me intrigued, Logan, because my toughest cut just did not come up among any of the names that you mentioned. That being said, you do have some of my honorable mentions. Donovan Mitchell, absolutely. Devin Booker, the eternal debate between the two of them. Donovan Mitchell being a little bit more of the advantage creator, having the upside of his downhill scoring force with his elite pull-up three-point shooting, with maybe a little bit more playmaking upside, but then the supreme versatility as a shot maker of Devin Booker, the underrated playmaking, the ability to basically fit in anywhere and be a super impactful offensive player. That being said, neither of them were compelling enough of meeting the very high bar that I did have here in terms of offensive impact. I think we have to shout out Trae Young here. This is why it's so fun to do a purely offensive list. Like last week we ranked our top 10 defenders, and that feels like more often we isolate that side of the ball.
I'm kind of shocked. You left Trae Young off your list.
Trae Young is on your list. Well, now I'm just even more intrigued here, Logan. So I guess I won't get too much into that, but I think that Trae makes a case just because if you think about the best regular season offensive engines, he's on that short list, and like basically every year is improving his team's offense by 7-8 points per 100 possessions. So I'll be interested in seeing the case that you make for him. Kawhi Leonard, I consider just because of the pure scoring value, especially in the playoffs. Ultimately, I just think with his regression as an athlete, rim pressure, his limitations as a playmaker, I couldn't have him here. Again, not an offensive engine at this point. Joel Embiid, I ultimately don't really know what to do with Embiid on any of these lists. I am presuming health for all players, but I feel like I can only give you the benefit of the doubt with health and give you the credit of being at the level you were when we last saw you healthy. And the reality is Joel Embiid played 20 games this past year. I don't think he was 100% healthy, but he was not giving you a level close to that of a top 10 offensive player. So if he makes some miraculous recovery to 2022 to 2024, Joel Embiid, obviously he's on this list, but what we saw this past year just wasn't close, and so I can't have him here. My toughest cut, Logan, I don't even know if I want to say yet. I feel like he's going to be on your list, and so I'm just going to toss it over to you to the 10 spot, and I'm going to keep the mystery alive. And if he's not on your list, he must be because you would have brought him up as an honorable mention. So who is in your 10 spot, Logan?
I don't know what you're alluding to.
I don't either, because I think
I'm
we're going to
shocked.
have some different names on here. I'm intrigued.
I guess actually one more honorable mention before we get started. I left LeBron off my list. Like, I mean,
That's what I was
don't know.
talking about.
Oh yeah, I don't have LeBron on my list. There's just a level of regular season impact that I just don't think LeBron can reach. When I compare him to a Trae Young, to a Jalen Brunson, I just don't think his body and I don't think he's capable of carrying the kind of load that some of these other guys can when we're looking at them purely offensively. And again, we always say this with LeBron. One game, a half, like I know what LeBron can do, and I'm not disrespecting. He's elite as a jump shooter. He's an elite post scorer. He's still a great decision maker. He still has that old man strength. It's literally just his ability to impose and enforce himself throughout the entirety of a regular season, where I don't have to worry about that basically with anybody else on my list. So, yeah, I just, as we were wrapping up, I just kind of realized I didn't even shout him out, and some people may be wondering, but yeah, he's 40. Like he can't exert himself the way he used to, and I am going to hold that against him. That's why he doesn't make my list.
Well, I am glad that you clarified that, because we maybe would have gone until the end of the episode without talking LeBron, because he was my first guy off, and I really did agonize over the 10 spot and really considered still having him on my list. So I do think that it bears discussion, because for God's sakes, he's LeBron. And even though he's 40, he's beyond a shadow of a doubt the best 40-year-old athlete I've ever seen, much less the best 40-year-old basketball player. I mean, it's not even remotely close, and I still think he makes a legitimate case for this list. You look at the regular season production, it's over 24 points, 8 assists a game on 60% true shooting. In the playoffs, he still gives you 25 points per game, 5.5 assists per game on 60% true shooting. Still an excellent offensive player. And his case, to me, would have to rest on his versatility as a scorer and his brilliance as a playmaker and just his offensive maturity in that sense. And I can see that argument. Like, I don't have hard and fast rules here about, okay, it's all about how great you are as an offensive engine, because I do also value versatility, and I give guys points for that on this list. I can't say, oh, it's all about the regular season or the playoffs, because it's a balancing act of the two. And that's where I think LeBron gives you good, not great marks at this point in a lot of categories. As a self-creator, he is diminished from where he was at a few years ago, and that's really just athletic regression. He's still a remarkable athlete for 40, but he is 40. If you look across pick and rolls, isolations, post-ups, in terms of self-created scoring, he's only giving you 0.94 points per possession, which is just a solid number, not what we're used to seeing from LeBron a few years ago. A big part of that is his regression in terms of his ability to get past people and to be the absolutely monstrous rim finisher and rim pressurer that he used to be. If you even compare him to 3 years ago, he was at 8.5 restricted area attempts per game. Still a massive number. Now he's down at 5.5. So you're talking about a significant drop off there. And as you said, the exertion point, the volume point, he just can't do what he used to. And he can't do what a lot of these younger guys can do in terms of fully carving up, maximally stressing defenses for 36 minutes a game, for 80 regular season games, and then a playoff run. And I do emphasize the playoff point because I know that oftentimes the thing with LeBron is kind of, yes, he's going to coast through the regular season, but when you get to the playoffs, he's still just about as good as anybody. And I just don't think that that's true anymore. I think we have seen his playoff value diminish as well. It's still definitely greater than his regular season value. But if you look at like the Minnesota series, that was not good. You watch LeBron face a switching defense, and he's repeatedly getting the bigs on him. Rudy Gobert, who will always be underrated as a defender in space and still has such massive size and length there, and he can affect pull-up jumpers and move his feet better than he gets credit for. But Naz Reid too. And just consistently, it's pull-up jumper after pull-up jumper. He's not getting past these guys. And even though he's better as a jump shooter than he's really ever been, LeBron taking a 43% mid-range jumper for the defense is a win because he's not potentially creating an efficient opportunity for himself at the rim. He's not collapsing the defense to create for others. And that's why his playmaking impact wasn't very pronounced in that playoff series. The assist numbers are lower than you're used to for sure because the scoring threat is also not as significant. So that does matter to me. And the regular seasons are certainly more up and down. Like October, November of this year, LeBron was giving you like 22 points per game on average efficiency. And he had the really ugly game against Minnesota in that really rough stretch. And it's like, oh my God, does he just not have it anymore? And then January, February, he goes on this great run where he's averaging like 27 a game on 64% true shooting. And then March, April, he comes back down. So those are all the reasons I just left him off my list. But the reason I still strongly considered him is his scoring versatility is so good at this point because his shot making is so good. LeBron is at 40 years old, basically peaking as a shot maker. Like his mid-range game is as good, if not better than it's ever been. His three-point shooting, I would say overall these last 2 years is the best it's ever been, where he's shooting in the high 30s from beyond the arc. And so, no, he's not the advantage creator he used to be. No, he's not the self-created scorer he used to be. No, he's not the rim pressure he used to be. But he is pretty effective in all these different ways, and he is still a brilliant processor, a brilliant passer. He does have that ability to still use his strength in a playoff setting at a pretty effective level. But when I compared him to the guy in my number 10 spot, ultimately, the dude who I went with can just do more to carve up a defense. He, as your number one option, can leave a defense hopeless and without answers and be an offensive engine in a way that LeBron cannot right now. Even though LeBron is unquestionably more versatile, if I'm building an offense around one or the other, I would prefer the guy who I think is the better offensive engine who I have in my 10 spots. So I do think the LeBron point deserves some significant yap just because it's hard for me to leave him off any list. He's been the top 10 in everything for so long. I would still take him as an overall player above the guy in my 10 spot, but purely offensively, he is my toughest cut. With all that being said, Logan, I'm very interested in where you're going with your 10 spot. Who do you have?
Yeah, so I have Trae Young in this 10 spot, and I think it's important to emphasize the point I made earlier about starting from scratch, because I think you make a good point with the scoring versatility. With a guy like Devin Booker, it's like Booker is certainly more malleable and could fit into a lot of different offensive situations better than Trae Young. And what I mean by that is Trae is just so ball dominant that he's always going to get and give you most of his offensive value when the ball is in his hand. So he has this sort of unique rigidity that some of these other guys on my list don't have, where you wonder, you're going to have to build your team out around him. You're going to wonder how well he could fit alongside another superstar. Where with a guy like Devin Booker, and I don't mean this in terms of team success, I just mean this in terms of basketball fit. We have seen Devin Booker work alongside other superstars. If it's Chris Paul in the point guard role and he's playing off ball, if it's KD, right? Book doesn't have those same kind of concerns. And if you want to hold that against Trae and put that in point of favor of D-Book, I completely understand. I really wouldn't push back all that much. The thing with Trae is, and Trae has his inefficiencies, right? Trae was not super efficient this year. He was shooting 41% from the field, 34% from deep. His true shooting percentage isn't bad because he does take a lot of three-pointers, and he's a great free throw shooter. 56.7%, but it's nothing that blows you away. The reason
Slightly
he is
below league average.
Yeah,
like just
exactly.
barely below league average.
Exactly. And I don't even think some of the efficiency things with Trae, and I get that sometimes I can hold it against guys I feel like unfairly, he does have the ball in his hands so much that I just accept it. I accept the turnover numbers. I accept the true shooting percentage. It's something that I had to reconcile personally with my personal grudge against James Harden. And I realized, okay, I don't like Harden. I'm going to hold these things arbitrarily against him. I shouldn't do that. He's always got the ball in his hands like Trae, and he's leading to good offensive outcomes. And ultimately, that's one of the most valuable things that you can do in basketball. Floor raising offensively and manufacturing great looks for your teammates. And that is something that Trae Young has always done in his career. He is going to spoon feed guys on your team easy looks, and you are always going to have a really good offense when he's on the court. You mentioned it earlier, Carson. The Hawks without him this year had an offensive rating of 110.9. With Trae on the court, had an offensive rating of 116.7. That's nearly a difference of 6 points on-off with Trae, and he also improves their true shooting percentage by over a percentage, 1.5% points actually when he's on the court too. So I just think that speaks to the fact that Trae is going to every possession come down. He's going to either get to his look, if it's a pull-up three, if it's a floater in that intermediate range. He is one of the hardest guys on the planet to guard in pick and roll because of those advantages, and he is going to enhance everybody offensively on his team, and that's ultimately why I felt comfortable with putting Trae on my list. The reason he can't be higher are some of the things that I've mentioned. The rigidity in terms of his play style, some of the inefficiencies, and then the third thing that I haven't touched on, I would say, is what's the word I'm looking for? The variability in his playoff performance. I think there are just guys higher on my list that I trust more to get their own buckets more efficiently. And that's enough to keep him in my 10 spot, where I do feel like everybody higher on my list can get to their bread and butter looks a little bit better than Trae. And it's because he's undersized. It's because he's very reliant on tough shot making and perimeter looks. But I really value highly his ability to make his teammates better and to just raise the floor of an offense. And when we're just talking about the offensive side of the ball, I wasn't going to feel comfortable leaving him off my list. So he's in my 10 spot.
I'm really interested in this. I'm a little bit surprised by it. I do think if we were ranking purely the top 10 regular season offensive floor raisers in basketball, Trae Young would be on my list. When you are talking about just asking somebody to have the ball in their hands for a vast majority of the game and elevate a pretty shitty group of offensive players around them, Trae is one of the absolute best at that. And this past year was really good evidence of that. Like him taking a group that really had no consistent positive offensive players in the starting lineup alongside him, especially after Jalen Johnson went down. But like with Dyson Daniels, his inconsistencies as a jump shooter. Shai was better as the year went along, much better, but really struggled early in the season. He was up and down. Limited production from your bigs, especially Capella. And he's taking the totality of this group, and he is able to create so many advantages, and he is such a dynamic playmaker out of pick and roll, and he is able to still score with such a volume that he's going to make you a pretty good offense. The reason that I can't have him higher is I do feel like there are other great offensive engines who don't have some of the same limitations and issues that I get with Trae. If Trae were 10% better as a pure shot maker, he would be higher on my list. And I really value what he has done in a very difficult situation, but the reality is he does have some issues in terms of putting the ball in the basket efficiently. The three-point volume is impressive. The range stresses a defense in a unique way. He's doing so much of it off the dribble, but he is only shooting 34% from deep. His floater game, which has been really his most efficient shot-making weapon, wasn't quite the same this year. He shot 45% in the paint outside the restricted area. As a finisher at the rim, obviously with his size, he's quite limited. He only shoots 52% in the restricted area. So he is very reliant on getting to the line for some of his paint offense, and he is very good at getting to the line. But some of those shot making issues with the extreme ball dominance, with the high turnover numbers, and again, that is certainly partly a consequence of him having such a massive offensive burden, but he also is pretty rigid in how you can play with Trae. And then I do think when it comes to like just operating out of the pick and roll against conventional coverages, this guy is a master, because the amount of passes he has available to him at his size is so impressive. I think there's a legitimate case he is the best interior passer in basketball today when it comes to finding angles, putting those passes on the money with such velocity to his bigs. He is so ridiculously impressive in how he amplifies them, and his vision is so supreme, and he's really aggressive as a passer. And then as a scorer, he can get to the line at a good volume. He can get to the floaters. He can get to his pull-up three. He's got his sort of bread and butter stuff there versus conventional pick and roll coverages. He's great. He does have his limitations as an isolation scorer, though, and so I think really good switching defenses can give him some trouble. He was 38th percentile in terms of isolation scoring efficiency there, and that's where I do think you can see some of the size, some of the inconsistency as a shot maker being an issue. And like you said, he's had some trouble against elite playoff defenses because of that, but the guy is one of the supreme offensive engines in the sport today. So my guy in my 10 spot, I just feel more confident in his ability to carve up any defense in basketball, whereas I feel like there are more defenses that have answers for a Trae. He's more susceptible to some offensive variance and some struggles. But I can see why you have him on your list. He would have been among my first few guys off. The guy who I have in my 10 spot, I don't know if he's going to be on your list, but you didn't mention him when we were giving our shout outs. I've got Zion Williamson, Logan. What do you have to say about that? Is he on your list?
Not healthy enough. I mean, Zion's one of those injury guys. Like I put him in the Embiid category, unfortunately. But I'm here for the case.
So the reason I make the distinction is last we saw Zion, he was absolutely outstanding at basketball. And so, like I said earlier, I am presuming health for players. But when Embiid was last healthy enough to be on the court, he looked really bad, whereas Zion looked absolutely incredible. So even though I know most likely he's not going to play more than 50 games in any season, I'm judging the value he's delivering when he's on the court, which is supreme. This past season, he gave you 25 points, 5 assists per game, 2.5 offensive rebounds per game, and per 36 minutes, those numbers go up to a point where it's like, all right, we're talking about damn near Giannis level production on a per minute basis. 31 points, 7 assists, 3.2 offensive rebounds, 3.8 turnovers on 60% true shooting, still quite good scoring efficiency in a brutal offensive situation. And he was able to, in that really bad offensive situation, totally elevate this team offensively. He improved their offense by 8 points in terms of offensive rating. They had a 117 offensive rating with him on the court. The New Orleans Pelicans, like, that is so insanely impressive when you consider the disastrous supporting cast that he had available to him this year. Now, were they winning games? No, but their offense was very good when Zion played. And I think that that is a testament to the fact that so many teams in the league cannot do anything with this guy. And that's where, when I compared him to LeBron, like, he can just do things to propel team offense as an engine LeBron can't do at this point. He can leave defenses helpless for the entirety of a game, for the entirety of a playoff series, if fingers crossed he ever gets there and is healthy. But we saw in a playoff atmosphere against the Lakers last year, Zion was absolutely outstanding. He was the best player on the floor in that game. And obviously, the thing that we're going to talk about first is just his one-of-one athleticism. That combination of insane first step with insane power and strength, with insane vertical explosiveness and aerial agility we've never seen from a guy who's 6'6", 280. Like, Zion is truly a unicorn in that way. And so his rim pressure, rim finishing is always going to be in a category in terms of volume that's like only him and Giannis. His free throw drawing ability is so ridiculous. Per 36, this guy's attempting 10 free throws per game. We know that. But I think Zion's gotten even better than he's been in years past. I think that this was definitely the best basketball he's ever played. His touch has improved, and that is significant to me just in terms of reducing a little bit the physical strain that is on him from going through explosive takeoff after explosive takeoff and hard landing. Like when he can still make north of 50% of his shots inside the paint, but outside the restricted area, that is a serious positive value to me. And it also gives him a little bit of a counter against defenses that are going to really, really load up, pack the paint. That touch is very good. His passing has gotten so good. And so we're talking about a guy who like legitimately running point for your offense is awesome. And if they could put the right personnel around him, bunch of shooters, space the floor, I think Zion could lead to phenomenal team offense as that sort of ball-dominant de facto point guard. And we've seen him do it in stretches, but they just haven't put very good personnel around him. And then he does get to the line and the rim at will. I also think one of his very unique values on this list is that elite offensive rebounding, where you're generating extra possessions, you're generating very efficient second chances for your offense. There's some hidden value with some players in the sense that, like, oftentimes we can kind of talk about your offensive value as like, oh, it's your scoring plus your playmaking, and you take the average of the two. And that's not really how it works, right? Sometimes scoring can be so supremely valuable that it can make up for some playmaking limitations because of how you reshape a defense entirely. Sometimes you're an elite screener. Sometimes you're an elite offensive rebounder. And for Zion, I think the elite offensive rebounding is one of those maybe underrated values that he brings. So I get it. You're holding the health against him. That's just a difference in criteria. But if you do watch healthy Zion, he's an absolute superhuman and was one of the best offensive players in basketball this year.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue against it. I'd like to see him do it on a big stage in a meaningful way. But like if I had to set a line for like this guy, I'd say like over under 33 and a half games played, and I'd probably take the under for next season. I don't know, man. I need to see it for an extended stretch. I know what Zion brings you when he's on the court. I don't know if he would. Maybe he'd be fighting Trae for this 10 spot. But
interesting.
Trae's always available, is one of the game's elite playmakers. I know Trae has his shortcomings. But yeah, I want to see Zion stay healthy, man. Until I get another full season of him, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting him on any of my lists.
I understand, again, just difference in criteria, but I do think healthy Zion is, to me, clearly the better offensive player than Trae. I think some of the limitations that Trae can have physically as a shot maker, at times the really high turnover numbers, like Zion is just so physically overwhelming. He just has such consistent paths to such efficient offense. And we've seen that. We've seen that consistently, and I thought that this was the best shape he's been in a while and just incredibly high-level basketball that he was playing. Let's move on to the number 9 spot, Logan. Who you got here?
So in my 9 spot, I've got another small guard. I've got Jalen Brunson here in my 9 spot, and I went back and forth with which Knicks player I should go with, if it was going to be Cat, if it was going to be Brunson. And again, I went back to I'm starting my team from scratch. And Jalen Brunson is a guy that I just know what he's going to do with the ball in his hands. He is going to methodically work for all of his shots, and he's going to get great look after great look in the paint. He's going to manufacture shots for his teammates really easily. Not on like a Trae Young level, right? But I think Brunson is way more reliable as a scorer and has
for sure
a way higher floor, as a scorer. Maybe Trae has a higher ceiling because of that three-point volume and stuff, but Brunson is just always, every game. I know what he's giving me, and especially with what we saw from him in these playoffs, some of the defensive matchups he was drawing, like against Asar Thompson, and like it wasn't easy, but Brunson always found a way to get his in any kind of matchup. He's also improved as a shooter, I thought, as well, and it was a little disappointing in the playoffs. I would have liked to have seen him, and I thought the Knicks offense just in general could have operated more smoothly, I thought, at points. And I don't know whether to hold this against Brunson or against Tibbs, because Brunson does have similarities to Trae in the sense that he isn't that super effective without the ball in his hands. Again, he got better there, I thought, during the regular season. But in the playoffs, I thought they really didn't tap into that at all, where he was running a ton of stuff with the ball in his hands. And so he does have a little bit of that rigidity. I wouldn't say to the extent that Trae Young does. But the reason I went with him, even though the numbers favor Cat, I feel like Cat is a little bit more dependent on having somebody alongside him, somebody who can get him shots or somebody who can hit him in stride. And don't get me wrong, he's gotten better as a post scorer. He's gotten a little bit better, I think, with the ball in his hands, and especially with all the space he had to work with in the Knicks offense because it wasn't clogged up and congested the way it was in Minnesota. But Brunson, to me, is just a higher floor guy. I find myself getting continually more frustrated with Karl Anthony Towns on that side of the floor, actually just in general, but we're just talking about offense today, than Jalen Brunson. I feel like Jalen Brunson is one of the most consistent players in basketball, and that's why he's here. He is a sure thing. 88th percentile as a pick-and-roll scorer, 87th percentile as an isolation scorer, 85th percentile as a post scorer. Jalen Brunson is just as consistent as they come, and so he may not have the absolute ceiling or some of these elite physical traits that guys higher on my list have, and that's why he's not higher, but I think he's got to be here. So I considered Brunson above my number 8 guy, but I do prefer the physical traits that guy has, despite Brunson arguably being the more consistent basketball player. So Brunson comes into my number 9 spot.
I have Brunson a couple spots higher. I have him number 7, and I've been critical of Jalen Brunson, but I want to be very clear. That is basically all about his defense, because I do think that he is an abysmal defensive player, but he is an incredible offensive player. The production this year, regular season, 26 points, 7 assists per game, 61% true shooting is very good for a guard, especially a small guard. And the efficiency is even better than that because this is a guy who can have the ball in his hands for the vast majority of the game and take excellent care of it. Protect the basketball, only 2.5 turnovers per game. We beat this drum so many times throughout the playoffs, but the possession battle was deciding so many games. So when you are a very high volume offensive player who can keep turnovers very low, that's a really valuable thing to be able to provide for your team offense. So I just think purely offensively, Brunson is out of this world. And I will say he is second only to Shai in the NBA right now in terms of his insane volume self-creation with great efficiency while he's limiting turnovers at an elite rate with the on-ball versatility that he has. It's just ridiculous. You mentioned the elite efficiency out of both isolation and pick and roll. Across those two play types, Brunson is generating 14.2 points per game for himself on 1.05 points per possession. So again, that combination of volume and efficiency as a self-creator, that's only second to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And this is just about as proven an offensive player in the playoffs that we have outside of, the absolute best of the best. But last 3 postseasons, he gives you 30 points per game, 7 assists per game on 57% true shooting. And his game just translates so supremely well because of the elite craftiness, the remarkable scoring versatility. And what we always talk about is when you get to the playoffs, if you can dominate that intermediate area, if you can dominate inside the paint, outside the restricted area, then you are going to be able to execute basically any defense because it is so exceedingly difficult to keep you from getting to those spots. Even if you do pack the paint, if you can just hit a 12 to 15 footer over top consistently, you're leaving the defense helpless. And Jalen Brunson is one of the absolute best there. 53% inside the paint, outside the restricted area, consistently shoots in the high 40s from the mid-range. And that's why he's such a playoff killer. That's why he's such a clutch killer. He does have the combination of elite ball handling, really good strength for his position where he can play through playoff physicality. He can be the one asserting himself. He can do it even out of the post in certain matchups. And so as a scorer, his floor is just about as high as it gets. And I think that's a huge advantage for him over a Trae Young. Like, obviously, Trae has a significant advantage as a passer, Brunson has a significant advantage as a scorer, though. I talk about those playoff numbers compared to Trae, where he is really struggling in terms of efficiency when we've seen him there, 53% true shooting. The volume is still pretty good, 26 points per game, but it's more up and down, and it's certainly not at the Brunson level of consistency where you're like expecting him to score 30 every game. And even though maybe like the offensive on-off stuff wasn't as impressive for Brunson this year, I really don't care. I consider that to be honestly more of probably like a sample size fluke, because if you look at the last couple years, I mean, he's among the absolute best of the best. And the 2024 season, what an insane offensive carry job. Brunson improved the Knicks offense by 15 points per 100 possessions. Then he went into the playoffs and had the most banged up squad of all time. No Julius Randle, OG Anunoby dealing with injuries. And he was able to just forcibly create quality enough offense for himself over and over again to raise the floor of a group that really had no other creators out there. I mean, at the very least, get up a good shot, give them a chance for an offensive rebound and a second chance opportunity. And there was just such a ridiculous burden on his shoulders, and I thought he handled it so well. I do see what you're saying about the ball dominance. I agree with it. Again, I would not say that it's Trae level. And I also think Brunson does have more off-ball skill than New York tapped into this year, especially in the playoffs. I think that we have seen that from him. He has the feel. He's always ridiculously in terms of his spot-up efficiency. He knows how to play without the ball, and that's something that a number of other guys can't say. So I hope that with Mike Brown now, they do get back to that a little bit more, and they allow him to tap into his utmost offensive versatility, take a little bit of pressure off him in terms of stagnant on-ball creation every possession. But that's why I have Brunson a couple spots higher than this. I think that purely as an offensive engine, his ability to score with that sort of volume, with very good efficiency, with elite versatility, with top-of-the-line clutch performance, taking care of the basketball, protecting it, and some of the stuff that we've seen in terms of offensive impact metrics, him carrying some of these groups, I really don't have a significant criticism of his offense.
I know this. I know we're talking two different eras when I ask this question, but peak for peak, would you rather have Jalen Brunson or Allen Iverson?
Oh, you son of a bitch, Logan. Comparison is the thief of joy, is it not? Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because during the 2024 playoffs, that was the comparison that I made, and other people made it too, because it was pretty intuitive, right? You have this very offensively limited roster, defensively slanted, that is just basically asking the small guard to score with insane volume, and maybe it's not the most efficient in that run, but hyper efficiency isn't possible in that sort of offensive environment with that burden, with the really problematic spacing and lack of ball handling around him. And I think Brunson was able to excel in that environment, as was Iverson back in the day. It's tough, man, because you have to give AI the edge, obviously, as a slasher, his ability to get to the free throw line at an even higher rate, although Brunson gets to the free throw line at a very high rate too. I think I would lean Brunson just because the shot making is so ridiculously good, and so the efficiency is significantly better. And I'm not talking about raw true shooting percentage. I'm talking about relative true shooting percentage, like versus league average. Brunson is consistently several points above league average, whereas Iverson hovered around and even dipped a little bit below. So I would lean on Brunson, and I think he's an absolute playoff scoring machine, and that's going to piss a lot of people off. But Brunson's an amazing offensive player, man.
I agree with you, and I think he's better at taking care of the basketball too. And like, these margins are close, and obviously I think AI is one of those what-if kind of guys where you'd love to see what he'd look like in the modern era with these spread-out offenses and stuff. But I think I agree, man. I think Brunson's a little bit better.
Yeah, there's a significant gap as a jump shooter. There is. Brunson is among the elite of the elite there, and AI was always more consistent, erratic, and so that's where he did have some real efficiency issues. Brunson's fantastic offensively, and I do have him higher purely offensively than the guy in my number 9 spot, Logan, who is Tyrese Haliburton. Where do you have Hallie on your list?
I've got Hallie higher on my list.
Ooh, interesting. All right, well then I'll give the spiel for now. This was another guy who I kind of debated with Zion and LeBron, and I ultimately decided he's just the more consistently impactful offensive engine of the bunch. There's an argument that he has a more significant limitation than those guys, but also he makes the most of his greatest abilities the most consistently, I would say, and so ends up being the truest offensive engine of them all because the guy's got some superpowers. And they were underappreciated for a long time. I think that people finally started to fully grasp just how great Hallie is in the run to the finals this year. The first thing I always talk about with him is just his superhuman processing and decision making. The ability to maybe not be the most aggressive passer on the planet, but to still consistently convert on high value playmaking opportunities, create those chances for your teammates while never making the wrong decision, never taking a bad risk, never turning the ball over. I praise Brunson for that. Hallie takes it to another level even, where we're talking about this guy can give you 10 assists per game and 1.7 turnovers. It's absolutely ridiculous. We've truly never seen anything like it in the history of this game. And then you also always have to talk about the ability in every way to find easy offense for your team. That's what Hallie does better than anybody else on the planet. Not creating easy offense, but finding it, making the absolute most of every advantage and every opportunity. So that means elite pace pushing, elite hit ahead passing, making the most out of your team's transition offensive potential where offense is just more efficient. And that's why the Pacers have been so consistently elite regular season and playoffs and have been able to generate that transition offense at a level that surpasses anybody else. And then he has that incredible ability to protect the basketball where you're never wasting possessions. As a scorer, I do think Hallie is pretty much always underrated. He does have his limitations, but in terms of on-ball efficiency, the guy's elite. I mean, he generates for himself 1.06 points per pick and roll in isolation. That's a great number. Like, of course, he's not doing it with Brunson volume. He's not a Brunson level scorer. It's not close, but that is Brunson level on ball efficiency. And he's got the very effective pull-up step-back three, which he shoots at a high clip with very good efficiency. He's got one of the elite floater games in basketball. He doesn't shoot a ton of mid-range pull-ups, but he's very efficient there. He's very efficient finishing at the rim, even though he's not attempting a lot of contested rim finishes. He has the ability to shift gears, get past people, certainly beat bigs off of switches. That's where he can put them in such a compromised position where he's threatening the step back, but if you overreact to that, then he'll drive past you. And overall, just a very effective on-ball scorer, a little bit more selective about deploying it, certainly, but very effective. And then elite off-ball value. I mean, phenomenal shooting value off-ball and just a feel and a willingness to relocate, to constantly be moving that makes him like this all-around elite impact offensive player. And his ability to optimize team offense, basically, with his play style, with his decision-making, that's why he truly makes everyone better. And you see that in every way. Whenever you actually watch the Pacers play, that's when you come to appreciate Tyrese Haliburton the most. It's not going to be watching highlights because his jumper's a little janky. It's not going to be looking at pure box scores because that doesn't capture what he's doing on every possession. But you look at their results, and when this guy's on the floor, they are a ridiculously good offense. And when he's not, they are a mediocre offense. This past year, he improved them by 8 points per 100 possessions. And if you look at the last two playoff runs, Indiana's been unequivocally the best offense overall. And that's why they've made back-to-back deep playoff runs. And they have like a 121 offensive rating in the playoffs with Hallie on the floor. Way, way, way better than it is when he's off. So it's just really undeniable at this point that this guy is one of the supreme offensive engines in the sport. The reason he can't be higher than this for me is because of his limitation as a one-on-one scorer, specifically versus elite switching defenses. I mentioned that the isolation and the pick and roll efficiency for him as a scorer is still quite good, but there are more limitations in terms of the volume. And that's not just Hallie being selfless. That's also the reality that if you put him up against a defense like OKC, they can switch everything, certainly switch 1 through 4. And no matter what, he is going to be dealing with a high-level perimeter defender. You can say, well, yeah, that's a really tough matchup for everybody. And of course it is. OKC's defense is the best we've seen in a long time. But it's particularly difficult for Hallie because he does struggle to straight up beat those high-level one-on-one defenders, right? He does a lot of his work scoring out of pick and roll against conventional coverages or beating switches as an isolation scorer. He doesn't have as much of an ability to get by people. His pull-up jumper is not something he can get off in tight windows because of his release. And so that limitation, yes, it's specific, but it does stand out against some of these other guys. And sometimes it is easier to diminish his offensive volume because of that. So purely offensively, I like the way Hallie plays more than Brunson. I think it is just such an awesome philosophy. I think the ceiling for an offense with Hallie as your best guy and really good players around him is so monumentally high. I do slightly prefer, though, Brunson's insane scoring value and the volume that he can take on as an offensive engine. The reason that I do have Hallie slightly higher as a player overall is because I do think Brunson's defense is pretty catastrophically bad, and I thought Hallie's defense was very solid in these playoffs. I mean, just the size component, some of the defensive playmaking just holds up much, much better. And the impact offensively is nutty. Like, we're nitpicking here. Hallie has led some of the best offenses in basketball in recent years. I do also think, though, he has a little bit more potential to be exploited by those elite defenses than some of these other guys who can just consistently exert that volume, exert that scoring force. So I'm going to land on him at number 9.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I have Haliburton at number 6. I think he's one of the game's elite offensive engines. I think he plays a brilliant brand of basketball, and I love his selflessness. I think he's a basketball genius. I think he's one of the top 3 passers in the sport. I understand your argument. I think it's just like a philosophy difference. Like, I understand all of Haliburton's shortcomings. I just prefer the way he plays basketball. I prefer his style of play. And I think that Hallie just could fit so easily alongside all kinds of different rosters. And I think there is less malleability, there's less rigidity and there's more malleability with him alongside other players than there is with a Brunson or a Trae Young. And like you said, I don't know if it fully can get quantified, like the hockey assists, the passing, and then the relocating that maybe opens up something on the back end for his teammates. Like, Haliburton, I do think for a long time is one of the most misunderstood players in basketball, but I do think people are finally fully appreciating his value. He's got elite touch, and he's got elite playmaking feel, and those are 2 of the most valuable things to me in a point guard and a guy who's going to have the ball in his hands a bunch and is going to be leading out decision-making for me. Like, I just think, like you said, dude, he enhances all of his teammates. He makes everybody around him better. He's one of the best decision-makers in the sport. Like, I just value that at such a high level. And I know that everybody is going to eat with Hallie on the team. Like, he is going to make sure everybody's involved. That offense is going to be humming. And I just can't disregard the on-off numbers. Like, they go from an offensive rating of 111 with him off the court to an offensive rating of 119 with him on the court. He improves their three-point percentage by 4%. He improves their true shooting percentage by 2.4% when he's on the court. And yes, like, I understand the scoring limitations. That's why Hallie can't be among the elite, the top 5 group that I have stamped here. But with everybody else, I think he's a way better playmaker, and I just think he has led to some of the elite offensive results. Also, not to mention that, I mean, you were talking about Brunson being clutch. Haliburton was the most clutch player in basketball in these playoffs last year. Like, he put a ton of games on ice, stuff that we've never seen before. So I think Hallie's got one of the most valuable skill sets in basketball. I think he takes great care of the ball. He gets everybody involved, and if he was a better scorer, he could be higher on my list. Like, it is that limitation, but I'm not going to – I couldn't leave him lower than 6. Like, he's going to lead to elite offenses, and he's going to be one of the best passers in the sport. I really value the way Hallie plays ball.
Look, man, I can't believe that I'm in this position where the defense episode, I had to push back a little bit on Mobley being ranked as high as you had him. Now Hallie, I'm lower on. These are such abnormal situations because I feel like compared to 98% of the NBA world, I'm higher on Mobley. I'm higher on Hallie.
I mean, I've loved Haliburton since he was in his dad's balls, man.
You absolutely have. And so I can't be too critical of this. I mean, I'm interested in seeing who ends up falling in the couple spots behind Hallie for you. The one thing I would say for Brunson is when it comes to Hallie versus Trae, I think there's a totally different level of versatility. I think there's a totally different level of ceiling raising, right? We're talking about different stratospheres. Fundamentally, I way prefer how Hallie plays basketball. Brunson, though, first of all, I mean, the playoff floor raising from him, I do think is clearly better than Trae's because his scoring value is so proven there. And there's more versatility, right? We didn't see it tapped into in these playoffs, but I do believe that Brunson has more to play with there. And also, like, it's just so ridiculous, dude. You put this guy on the floor, and last few years, you've got a 121 offensive rating, a 123 offensive rating, a 120 plus offensive rating. And that's where I say this year's offensive on-off stuff we shouldn't overreact to because sample size. And also, like, the Knicks offense just now also had a very good player who could captain units when he was off the floor in Karl Anthony Towns. And so to some extent, they can like cannibalize each other's on-off numbers a little bit just because there's a very good player on when they're off a good portion of the time. But we've seen the insane offensive impact stuff from him.
The final point that I would make between Haliburton and Brunson is I think Haliburton generates a lot of easy buckets that Brunson doesn't, and I don't know whether to attribute this to Brunson individually or Tibbs, but the pace of play. I really value the pace at which Haliburton makes his teams and his teammates play at because I think that is what creates so many easy buckets and opportunities for this Indiana team where I think Brunson sometimes, and again, this can sometimes be to your team's benefit, but it can also sometimes be a shortcoming, can strangle the pace a little bit and play super slow where I know what Haliburton is flying up the court. He is getting the ball to the other end, like, and that's a big reason why they create so many easy opportunities.
I completely agree with that, Logan. You are preaching to the choir, and I still think that Brunson's scoring edge just slightly offsets it on the offensive side of the ball purely for me. Also, just speaking to the clutch point, obviously, Hallie had one of the signature clutch runs in terms of like game-tying, game-winning shots. He was 12 of 14 on them in the entire year at 1.5 of 6 in the playoffs. It was ridiculous. But when it comes to consistent clutch scoring, Brunson is the best guy in basketball right now. This regular season, he averaged 5.6 clutch points per game. Nobody else was at 5 or higher, and he did that on 52% from the field. His ability to work his way to his spots against any defense on the planet and make those shots at a reasonably high clip is insane. You can't take for granted 30-7 in the playoffs. You can't take for granted I can create myself 15 points per game and do it on north of a point per possession, like a good bit north of a point per possession. That's insane that Brunson does have that sort of self-creation. But I totally see the case for Hallie being higher than him. These guys are dealing with razor-thin margins for me on the offensive side of the basketball. And overall, I think I would have them back-to-back in my overall player rankings, and I have them with just one guy in between in my offense rankings, with Brunson at 7 and Hallie at 9. Logan, who is in your 8 spot?
I'm guessing we're going to agree here with the guy in our 8 spot. I have Anthony Edwards.
Okay, so do I.
I'm very high on Anthony Edwards. He has got a special combination of elite downhill rim pressure and great touch and ability to finish through all kinds of contact with the elite pull-up jump shooting. And if you've heard us talk about Anthony Edwards, there are 2 big areas that he needs to improve in to climb up this list. And I think he's going to. It's just a matter of when. It's playmaking and it's that intermediate scoring skill set. But I don't want to sell short the A-plus traits that he does have. 39.5% on over 10 attempts per game last year from deep. That's really rare stuff. I mentioned this stat a billion times throughout the regular season. Dame, Clay, Steph, the only other 3 players in NBA history to shoot over 40% on 10 or more attempts per game. Ant was in that club for 90% of the regular season until basically the tail end. So an elite pull-up jump shooter from behind the arc and an elite downhill rim pressure. But you do see some of the shortcomings in the playoffs when I thought defenses did a really good job of taking away those 2 shots. And that's the next adjustment that's going to happen because you're frying this team. What do? They're going to make an adjustment. The adjustment was we got to take away the pull-up 3, which teams did. And then they made the adjustment, we got to take away the rim. And that's where Ant's going to have to prove himself down the road as a playmaker. Like, I can't cut Ant slack when I'm holding all of these other guys up to a superstar standard just because he's young or just because I love Anthony Edwards so much. Mm-hmm. And boy, do I love Anthony Edwards. But I can't just cut him any slack in those regards. He's a 30 to 40% mid-range shooter. And sometimes that can even nosedive below 30% on some bad stretches. And Anthony Edwards' mid-range jumper is a win for the opposing team's defense. Normally, anybody on the Minnesota Timberwolves taking a shot that isn't Anthony Edwards is kind of a dub. So anytime you can force either of those two scenarios, you've won. It's going to be about Ant's ability to figure out those counters and to grow in those areas of his game. But he's already really good. I mean, in the regular season, he was giving you 28 a night on 59.5% true shooting. In the playoffs, he gave you 25 points and 6 assists per game on 56.4% true shooting. It was obviously a tough matchup against Oklahoma City, but it was a tough matchup for SGA too. And guess what? SGA carved up everybody he ran into against them, right? So we're going to hold all of these guys to the upper echelon, the top standards. And those are the few areas where Ant really needs to improve to climb higher on this list. I think he's got better physical attributes than a couple of the guys above him on this list. And that's why I considered maybe Ant should be higher because his ceiling is so high. And in certain defensive matchups, some teams, kind of like you were saying with Zion Williamson, if you don't have the right guy, Ant is going to flambe your ass. He's just going to cook you. But against teams with that kind of caliber of defense, they can neutralize him a little bit more, and he doesn't have that kind of counter to turn to where he can still be one of the best of the best. So I think Ant's going to be higher on this list at the end of next year if we're going to rank these guys again. I think he's going to continue to improve, and I think he has advantages over some of the players higher on my list, but those few shortcomings are enough to keep him here in my number 8 spot.
Ant versus Hallie purely offensively is a tough one, man. Both coming out of the 2020 draft. It's so close. I do feel like in terms of consistency as an offensive engine, Hallie is better. But then I feel like in terms of being matchup proof and no matter what, being able to deliver that value. So I guess maybe consistency isn't exactly the right term, but I feel like over the course of your season, Hallie is the guy who more nights is going to be the great offensive engine, the superior offensive engine. But his lows are just lower, is how I would put it then. There are certain matchups in which he runs into more issues than Ant, who still does have stuff to figure out. But when you are the sort of athlete he is, and you have that combination of explosiveness, strength, vertical athleticism, rim finishing, and now you can shoot 40% from 3 on super high volume, 10 attempts per game, and you're figuring things out as a playmaker, and there's definitely room for improvement there, but you demand such aggressive coverages from defenses because of your scoring. Now that you have this insane downhill threat and pull-up three-point shooting threat that, like, sometimes the reads you have to make are pretty simple. You think about some of the coverages that he saw with the Lakers, with the Warriors, right? Those teams just so aggressively slanting their defenses towards his scoring value that if he's just consistently making the right basic reads, he can rack up 7 assists per game and create pretty damn good shots for his teammates. So if you look at like the overall offensive impact stuff, again, I think that favors Hallie. Ant has improved his team's offense this past year by like 4 points per 100 possessions. It's not as massive a number. But there is a playoff translatability with him that is so damn proven at this point, where last 3 postseasons, he gives you 27 points per game and 6 assists per game on 58.5% true shooting. Also delivers a little bit of sneaky offensive rebounding value where he's just so springy. He can get you like an offensive board a game, which isn't nothing. And again, it does come down to that ability to still assert yourself in any matchup. Like, I don't want to hold the Hallie OKC series against him too much because I hold that Thunder defense in such high regard. In fact, my entire thing throughout the entire playoffs, throughout the entire season, I was saying this is the best defense we've seen in 2 decades. And then throughout the playoffs, it's like, oh my God, every star struggles against OKC. Let's shit on that star. Well, maybe we noticed the pattern. Maybe they're just going up against the best defense that we've seen in a long time. I do think, though, if you compare how Ant and Hallie fared, yes, they both had their issues, but Ant was able to fare significantly better. And actually, I mean, starting with like the second half of game 2, and especially that in game 3, he was able to just kind of will himself into the paint, to the rim, and score with a volume and to some extent an ease that nobody else was able to do against OKC the entire postseason. Jokic had higher offensive highs, but he did it in a different way. No other perimeter player was able to consistently get downhill, navigate these packed paints like Ant was. Now, a game and a half isn't going to make your case on this list, and he did have some inconsistencies in terms of playmaking outside of that, some issues with scoring efficiency outside of that. Absolutely. He didn't play up to his standard maybe, and certainly, right, you saw the big difference between a fully matured offensive superstar like Shai and Ant, who still does have some things to figure out in terms of scoring nuance, versatility, consistency as a decision maker, but he was still clearly the better of the two between him and Hallie. And I would kind of make this same point when we're talking about Brunson versus Hallie. The floor is just higher for the guys who have the ability to will themselves to their spots and to be so consistently productive as a scorer and to stress the defense in a massive way, where neither Brunson or Ant are particularly good passers. That's a limitation of both of theirs. But again, sometimes the reads for them are pretty easy and they can still get to that like 7 assist a game number. So I'm kind of talking through this myself. I am going to lean on that being the reason that I go with Ant. Again, Hallie was really struggling as a scorer versus OKC. He was really struggling for once with turnovers. Just the ball pressure was so overwhelming. They were able to keep his volume so low as a scorer and his efficiency, and he wasn't creating advantages, so he wasn't doing his normal playmaking thing. And I guess I've just never really seen Ant helpless like that in a playoff series. But then I also think Hallie at his absolute best does have even higher highs offensively. When he is also scoring 25 points per game on you and he's cooking switches, then all the other stuff that makes him so ridiculously special makes that overall impact even greater. It's insanely close for me. These are, again, razor-thin margins.
Yeah, ironically, I'm now put in a position to argue against my baby boy Ant.
At the end of the day, Logan, we're not really arguing that much is the thing. Like, we're making our cases, but I think we both see both sides. Let's not go both sidesist on this issue. Let's not be cowards, but like, I'm not going to be pissed about any argument you make for Hallie over Ant because I'm considering the arguments myself up until the buzzer. You know, like that's how close it is.
No, I understand.
But then again, we could rage bait and we could shout at each other. I don't know.
It is the physical imposition. I mean, you got me thinking too.
Well, that's what we're trying to do here, I guess, Logan.
The thing for me is, I agree with you about what you were saying about the consistency, though. I was thinking over the course of a full regular season and playoffs, there's just enough with Ant and some of his shortcomings where I prefer Hallie. And, like, it is the lead ball handling, the decision-making, the actual, like, lead guard stuff. And I could see Ant, and I've been predicting this, I feel like, for 2-3 years now. I could really see Ant putting it all together this next season and just going right to top 5 or something. Mm-hmm. Like, it is so easy for me to envision with Ant because he's got these physical traits that nobody else has. The explosiveness, the verticality, the elite pull-up three-point shooting. Like, if he just gets, 10 to 15% better as a playmaker and mid-range scorer, I'm going, damn, maybe he is just stamped as a top 5 guy, but and it sucks, too, because now Haliburton, it sucks for him because he is also going to be making this climb back from a very serious injury. Also, a guy I didn't mention, he wasn't in his – I should have mentioned this with our honorable mentions. I didn't consider him as highly as some of the other guys. Jason Tatum would probably be in my first 5 to 10 off, somewhere in that range. I was just thinking about injured players. Tatum would have been just off as well, but it sucks because Haliburton's going to have to come back, and so Ant's going to have a step on him in that regard, but – in terms of play styles, purely offensively, it's not even like aesthetics, man, because, like, I don't know. I was going to say, like, aesthetics. I don't even feel like people, like, because you did your video on on That Boy Nice. Like, Hallie's not even, like, a That Boy Nice kind of, like, highlight player, but it is that I think he plays a beautiful brand of basketball, and I prefer the way Hallie plays. So That's what I'll lay it at.
I totally get it. I actually think that he is a victim of the aesthetics bias because people tend to focus more on like one-on-one scoring skill when they talk about that in bags, and that's where like Hallie's got obviously kind of the goofy jumper and handle, but they're both super effective, and it's everything he does around that that makes him so special.
He just gets so many easy looks every game.
He optimizes team offense. So that's why I'm still probably going to lose sleep over this one. And I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm going to throw up because it makes me nervous to ever in any way wonder if I'm disrespecting Tyrese Haliburton. But I do feel like the argument I've laid out makes sense. I will say to your point, there's no question Ant has more potential for growth offensively because Hallie, it does feel like, is pretty much maxed out, and hopefully he gets back to the level that he was at after the first 15 games this year. I mean, most of the regular season, he was playing at a second-team All-NBA level, and then into the playoffs, obviously, some of the best basketball of his life. I just hope he gets back to that. But with Ant, it's like you still feel like maybe he could be even more overwhelming with his volume as a driver, overwhelming with his volume getting to the line. Maybe if he does find a way to add another level of manipulation, change in pace, right? Can he just sort of carve his way to his spots? Because that's not something he does at the upper echelon level.
Exactly. I think that's a great point because he's got all the pop. It's really about, I think, being methodical, right? Like, this isn't a great comp because their body types are so different, but like the way Brunson slowly it crafts and gets to his spots, I don't feel that kind of patience and comfort with Ant sometimes, where it does feel a little bit more erratic and rushed and sometimes out of control. I feel like that's going to fix itself with time, but that is the one thing with Ant that I would like to see cleaned up a little more, him becoming a little bit more methodical.
For sure. And obviously part of that is like getting to his spots for intermediate shot making, but also applies to like getting all the way downhill, right? If you look at Ant's raw athleticism, his explosiveness, you would think, oh yeah, he's got to be getting to the rim and the line at similar rates to Shai, and it's not close. And the reason for that is Shai has this next level change in pace and balance and body control and these things that allow him to navigate the most packed paints in basketball and still somehow get past you, pirouette to the basket, and then his length and his finishing touch is just so ridiculous. I don't know how I already got onto Shai Glaze, but here we are. But nevertheless, there's more nuance that Ant can add to his game in all these ways that give him the potential to be a top 5 player on this list, but he's not just there yet. So you've got Hallie up at 6, which means that number 7 spot is wide open for you, Logan. I've got Brunson there. I think I know who you're going to have here. If I had to guess.
Who's your guess?
I'm Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I don't want to make this case, man. The
Hallie over KD case?
Yeah. I'm just not really in the mood to do it.
Well, buddy, you signed up for it. Time to walk the plank.
I'm looking at this one, and it's tough because there's definitely still a scoring gap, a pretty significant one.
Yep, you could say that.
I do think there's a playmaking gap.
And the argument, if I could make it for you for a second, would be if I am starting an offense with one of these guys, Hallie is more of the true offensive engine at this point. I just think KD is such a ridiculously versatile, hyper-efficient, all-time great scorer that I don't care, and I'd still take him even if he's not creating shots for others at that level or creating advantage at the highest level. He's Kevin Durant, and I know what I'm getting from him as a scorer, and it's so ridiculously valuable in any situation. But that's not to say there isn't an argument for Hallie.
Yeah, there's an angel and a devil on my shoulders right now, and one of them is going, overall team impact offense, and then the other's going, it's fucking KD,
Craig off live on the pod. Oh, no, what was it saying?
That's the third one. That's the other guy. That's the other
me.
guy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dude, the most ridiculous number that I've found with this, well, there's a few. There's actually a lot with Kevin Durant because he's just a ridiculous basketball player. He is a freak of nature. One, the fact that he is averaging 27 points per game on 53-43, 84 splits on 64.2% true shooting at his age is insane. The other ridiculous thing, even with a guy like Devin Booker, is improving the offense for the Suns this past season by 3.8 points per 100 possessions. Those are all pretty gnarly. Also pretty gnarly about Kevin Durant. He was a 93rd percentile isolation scorer and 92nd percentile spot-up scorer, which speaks to two things. On ball, he's going to fry you one-on-one. Off ball, if you leave him open, he's going to fry you. You need to pray. You need to go to church and pray that KD's just going to miss the jumper. The two craziest numbers to me about KD's case, and I think, let me look at the rest of my numbers. Only guys who have comparable numbers to this are Jokic and Steph Curry. How much KD improves the team around him in terms of three-point percentage and true shooting percentage when he's on the court. He improves his team's three-point percentage by 5.1% when he's on the court, and he improves his team's true shooting percentage by 5.3% when he's on the court.
What's really interesting about that is obviously there's noise with those numbers anytime you look at them. But when you think about Jokic and Steph, their primary value there is their playmaking in one way or another, right? How they bend the defense to create shots for their teammates. So they're getting higher quality three-point shots. The entire team's is going up. If I had to guess with KD, it's more so just he's that ridiculously great as a jump shooter.
He's on the court.
He is raising the percentages more so than his teammates are shooting better. It's just when a guy comes out there and shoots 43% from three, yeah, that makes a massive difference. Obviously, Steph does the same, but Steph's also creating more quality shots for his teammates.
Well, that's why Jokic and Steph's numbers are that much more ridiculous in terms of the team context, because Jokic and Steph are actually crazy. But you compare it to a guy like Devin Booker, at a pretty simple comparison because they're on the same team. Book also makes his team that much better per 100 possessions overall by points, but he doesn't improve their percentages at all. Like, KD is a freak. And so it really is that scoring impact that I wondered. Like, when I compare the scoring impact, it's up there with anybody else on this list. I mean, truly. Giannis, Shai, Luka, whoever you want to compare it to. Ultimately, everybody above KD on this list, I think, improves their teammates around them more and is a better playmaker. It's not really some of it is the physical imposition, but with how efficient KD can be from all three levels at this stage, that doesn't even compute to me, right? Like, sure, he's regressed athletically. Duh, that's going to happen as you get older and you suffer the injuries that KD has had. But it is, to me, more the offensive overall impact and the playmaking value that I'm getting from other guys. So I agonized over my 10 and 9 spots. The thing I agonized over most was going with Haliburton or KD, but I did end up going with Haliburton. For everybody else higher on the list, though, ironically, I think everybody else higher than Tyrese on this list is a better scorer. I think everybody higher than KD on this list is a better playmaker, and that's why I went with KD in my 7th spot.
So I have KD at number 6. I didn't consider him lower than this, but I also barely considered him higher than this. I did consider him for my 5 spot, but above that, you talk about his scoring value being just about as good as anybody's, and I do think that there are a few guys who still do surpass him there by like a margin where I don't think it's really arguable at this point. And the reason for that is just because of the significantly diminished rim pressure that you're getting from Kevin Durant at this point. He is so ridiculously efficient around the rim. He shoots 79% there. It is a little bit similar to what I was talking about with Hallie, where like both these guys are very low volume rim finishers. Yeah, they're taking the shots at the rim that they're comfortable with taking, and it's not a lot of them, so they're going to be more efficient. KD takes 2 shots per game in the restricted area. That's such a small number. Like, I haven't looked it up, but I remember a couple years ago even, like, KD was outside the top 150 in restricted area makes per game, and I bet that number is still there. Like, he just doesn't get to the rim. And so there is an aspect of not having that scoring dimension, not having some of the playmaking opportunities that come with collapsing the defense, getting deep into the paint. That's why he's not a true offensive engine. That and the fact that as a playmaker, he is just solid. But I can't have him lower than this. He still has very arguably the best combination of on and off ball scoring in the NBA. You mentioned the 93rd percentile ISO efficiency, 92nd percentile spot up. That kind of says it all right there. He generates 1.04 points per isolation and pick and roll combined for himself. Excellent number on massive volume. And You just look at his scoring efficiency at every level, and it's stupid, bro. I mentioned 79% in the restricted area, 53% paint non-restricted area. That is a top-notch number. 53% mid-range. That's like the best number in basketball. 43% from deep. That's one of the best numbers in basketball. So it's just insane. I say it all the time, but when you're 7 feet tall and you've got the best handle that we've ever seen from a player of that size, you can get to your spots, rise up, and shoot 55% from mid-range, over 40% from three. You're always going to be extremely effective. And when you add the dimension of elite off-ball scoring with that, he's just like the ultimate complement. And the guys who I have in my top 5, I do feel like can just take on more volume, create more advantages for an offense. They're more of engines. That's why I have them higher. But everybody below, it's like, just give me the versatility, the efficiency, the 27 points per game every single night from Kevin Durant. Like, truly unbelievable efficiency that you're getting from him. That's why I have him up in my 6th spot. He's still one of the absolute best scorers on the planet. Let's get in to the top 5, Logan. Who is in your 5 spot? Because you had Hallie at 6. I had KD at 6.
I have got Giannis Antetokounmpo in my 5 spot.
As do I.
And at this stage in Giannis' career, I think this is where, what would you say, like 90%? Is that too much? I feel like 90% of his value is coming as an offensive player at this stage in his career. And
90% might be a little high, but 75 to 80%, I would say,
maybe
is
that's
accurate.
Yeah, maybe I'm not accurately including like rebounding value in that, but I think that if you think of Giannis theoretically, and like theoretical Giannis is a better defender because of the load that he's taking on offensively. Like he just can't exert himself as much as he could, say, 6 years ago. And I think it's pretty obvious, but he has gotten so much better even as an offensive player. Like the numbers may not be that big of a difference in terms of volume and efficiency, but the little adjustments that Giannis has made have made a world of difference in his offensive impact. One, he is genuinely a great defensive collapser, and he's always been a great defensive collapser, but playmaker out of collapsing the defense now. And I'm not just talking about basic reads that he was making years ago. Giannis is making legitimately tough, crazy kick-out passes now when he is collapsing the entirety of the defense, creating very easy and high shot quality for all of his teammates. And he's giving you 7 assists per game, both in the regular season and the playoffs. The other little adjustment, and we talked about this throughout the regular season, was the fact that he has basically completely eradicated the three-point jumper from his game. For a while, Giannis felt compelled to take that jumper to keep the defense honest, so to speak. And the irony of that is, no matter how many times Giannis was going to take that shot, the defense was never going to play him honestly on those jumpers, because it's like Russell Westbrook taking that shot. We don't care. That's a great look for us. This is what I was saying about Anthony Edwards. Anytime you get Ant to settle for a mid-range jumper, let's throw a parade. Like if Giannis is taking a 3, that's a victory for your defense. And so now that he's eliminated that, it has made him even more efficient. And he's added a mid-range jumper to his bag instead as the counter. And it's not crazy. He's not doing KD pull-ups and stuff like that, but little touch shots, wide open mid-range jumpers, he's capable of hitting now at a pretty efficient clip. All combined with the fact that he is still a monster at getting downhill. And if you don't have a kind of guy that can match up with him physically, he's going to take your lunch every single day. I mean, the playoffs weren't eye-opening. We expected Giannis to eat like that, but it was ferocious. 33, 15, and 7 on 65.1% true shooting. Granted, he's turning the ball over at a pretty high clip, but he's always got the ball in his hands. And the Bucks were so strapped for talent. They were never going to win that. But it's that combination of scoring and playmaking, 30-plus points per game, 7 assists per game, super efficiently. He's just unstoppable in most matchups. Again, if you don't have that counter, Giannis is going to just vanquish you. He's like Thanos. He's just going to destroy you. He improved the Bucks offense by 8 points per 100 possessions with him on the floor than off, a 112.4 offensive rating without him, a 120.4 offensive rating with him. The only reason why he can't be higher on the list is just the fact that he can't score from everywhere on the court. And that's pretty simple. Even so, even though like that's a glaring weakness for him, the fact that he can't really space the floor at a high level, I would hear an argument for Giannis probably all the way up to number 2. Giannis is that destructive of a force. Again, I'm not going to make that argument because we're just gauging offense. I think some of the guys' gravity and some of the tough shot making that guys have above him is more valuable. But I would hear someone make that argument because Giannis is just so physically dominant. But he comes in at number 5 for me.
That's interesting. I couldn't see it up to number 2. I did feel that Giannis was pretty firmly going to end up in my 5 spot, but I do think this is a testament to how significant his offensive improvement is, even if it has been to some extent on the margins. And like you say, like the regular season production volume efficiency was always so good, but there's no question that Giannis is the most complete and best he's ever been as an offensive player. And I was just thinking like 2020, 2021, that's a very strong argument that that's when he peaked as an overall player because the defensive value was so superb. But if you just think about like where he would have ranked purely among offensive players at that time, like if we presume health for the league, Steph, Luka, Jokic, KD, Bron, Harden, Dame, Kawhi, like I would say those guys are all better. I don't think it's impossible that you could get to maybe 10 names that were better than Giannis offensively at that time. I certainly think 7, 8 is a lock. So for him to now be in the top 5 is a testament to his improvement. And I compared him to KD, and I thought about the case for KD being the perfect offensive complement. But Giannis is just so clearly the better offensive engine at this point, and we can't really undersell how impressive what he did this season was. You mentioned the massive offensive on-off differential, but to me, the most impressive number, if you're looking at that sort of impact stuff, is the fact that he led Milwaukee to a 123 offensive rating without Dame this season. Like, KD with such a limited supporting cast just couldn't do that at this point. In fact, like, we basically saw that this past year, right? He's just not single-handedly bending a defense like that. He's not playmaking like that. He doesn't have that sort of scoring volume. Obviously, not nearly that level of rim pressure. And it's just incredible what Giannis does for your offense. I mean, 94th percentile pick and roll creator. That's what I'm most excited for this year. Obviously, the Dame injury is super unfortunate, and the fact that their fit never worked out is unfortunate. I think that they both have to bear some blame for that. I think that it spoke to a lack of versatility for both of them in certain ways, right? We envision this world where, Giannis is going to be this super willing screener and this incredible short roll playmaker and downhill scoring force off the roll, and he and Dame are just going to amplify each other. And it never worked out like that. They both ended up being pretty ball dominant players who could, to some extent, like inhibit the other one reaching their ceiling when they shared the court. But as a floor raiser, if you just put shooting around Giannis and you put the ball in his hands and you say, go, we'll give you a screen, make something happen, a high screen so you've got a lot of runway, he's just absolutely incredible at this point. I mean, unrivaled as a physical force, the physical dominance, the rim pressure. He's top of the line in the NBA today. And he does have an ability to just leave certain teams completely helpless. Like I was talking about that as a point in Zion's favor, right? Just that physical dominance. If I can get to the rim over and over again, and I can make the reads as a passer, and certain defenses just have nothing for that, and I can walk into 30 plus points per game on insane efficiency. Giannis takes that up even another level. I mean, look at what he did to the Pacers. Look at what he's done to the Pacers in like their last 15 to 20 games. The guy basically averages 35 points per game on 65% true shooting because they just have nobody who can contend with him physically. And that's a possibility with this guy in a way that, I mean, very few other players are going to leave you just like crossing your fingers. There's nothing we can do like that. He's also still the best transition scorer in basketball. As you mentioned, he's evolved into a very good passer. He's been a good passer for a long time, but the complexity of some of the reads that he's making, his technical passing ability is so damn good, especially driving downhill. And now he can shoot 45% from mid-range as a counter. Like, at the end of the day, if Giannis takes a mid-range jumper, it's still a win for the defense because Giannis is not getting all the way downhill where he's either going to shoot 70% at the rim or get to the free throw line 10 to 12 times a game. But nevertheless, the ability to shoot 45% from mid-range, even on low volume, even as a second option as a counter, it's a good thing to have, especially compared to shooting 25% from three a couple more times a game. Like, it's just a better dimension to have in his game. So ultimately, everybody above him, I feel like they're all such offensive freaks. And I don't even know if you can knock like Giannis's lack of over-the-top shot making at this point. I think it only becomes relevant when we are comparing him to the absolute best of the best. But I will say, even though the mid-range has improved, that has been an issue in some previous playoff matchups. And the lack of like a consistent paint touch floater or hook shot, he doesn't have any of that. That matters when we're nitpicking here. But his ability to just elevate subpar supporting cast at this point is very proven, wildly impressive. You just can't really dismiss 30 points per game, 6.5 assists, 2.2 offensive rebounds on almost 63% true shooting, and he played even better in the playoffs this year. He's an absolute freak. That's why they call him the Greek Freak. But my top four are even greater offensively. So who's in your 4 spot, Logan?
Damn.
He hit the damn button.
I've got Steph Curry in my 4 spot.
So do I.
And I debated having Steph in my 3 spot or even if he should be higher just because of we talk about this all the time. I accept no Steph Curry hate ever.
Yeah, no.
The fucking Herculean carry job that the Warriors have put him, like, the Warriors of the world and Stephen Curry is Atlas. And if he wasn't there, they just plummet into the void of space and time. Like, they're not relevant whatsoever. We saw this when Steph got injured, and obviously this is a different basketball team in terms of roster construction. But Steph goes down, and this team wins like 10 games, man. Steph is not now, like with Jimmy Butler, I'm sure they could muster 30 or something like that. But Steph is what keeps this team alive. Like, the numbers don't make any sense with Steph. Steph improved them by 14 points per 100 possessions with him on the court versus off. And I was talking about some of these numbers with KD. Steph improves them by 4% from deep when he's on the court and improves them by 7.4% in terms of true shooting with him on the court. That's a stupid number. The only guy who has better numbers on this list is Nikola Jokic, and we all know what Jokic does to everybody. He's the best offensive player on the planet. Keep it in your pants, buddy.
Sorry.
I saw that.
Excited. I got excited for a second. Is that a crime?
I'm going to give you a yellow card, okay?
I'll take
Watch
it.
it, buddy.
Just don't throw me out of the game.
Watch it, buddy.
Okay. Message received. This is a sexually repressive society, an anti-joy society. Understood, Logan. Got it.
Steph's insane. And, I mean, the difference when he finally got Jimmy Butler, because I know we were talking for so long, you know, is this real? The first half stats of the season, like the Warriors are not winning games. Steph is not what he was. And then, boom, Jimmy gets in there like a shot to the arm, flips the switch. Boom, the Warriors are back. I don't even know how you quantify what Steph Curry does for this basketball team. They go from one of the worst offenses in basketball to one of the best with Steph on the court. Like, that's the difference that he makes. This is not a playoff caliber basketball team without Steph Curry. This is a joke of an offense without him. And he has one of the toughest jobs in basketball. I don't know if it's tougher than Jokic's in terms of like how he improves his team, but it's one of the most difficult, I think, in the sport. And I debated between him and Shai. Ultimately, the reason I decided to go with Shai, not just because Shai was finals MVP and led the Thunder on this conquest. Basketball is a team sport, and a big reason the Thunder won the championship this year is obviously because of their historically great defense. I just think that Shai and all the guys above Steph on this list can just physically impose themselves in ways that Steph can't at this stage in his career. The difference in physical and athletic imposition that Steph can do on a game-to-game basis. I prefer the abilities of those guys above him, but it was a real debate for me, man, and I really thought Steph might crack my top 3. Ultimately, I do think some of the athletic regression I'll hold against him, but like I said, man, Steph's got one of the toughest jobs in basketball, so I'm not going to discredit him at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider Steph for a second below this. I still think his offensive impact is undeniably top 4. You mentioned the offensive on-off difference of 13 points per 100 possession improvement. Like, outside of the peak stuff that we're seeing from Jokic right now, Steph is the offensive on-off GOAT in the era that we have that data since 1997. And it makes a whole lot of sense, man. I mean, he just reshapes defenses in a way that we've never seen before. And there's still no comparison for it. There's absolutely still no comparison for his off-ball value and his gravity. And the Steph that we saw down the stretch, who averaged 27 points, 6 assists per game on 65% true shooting in 27 games with Jimmy Butler. And the Warriors were beating everybody. They were 22-5 in those games, if I remember correctly. Like, I'd probably still have that guy number 2, because I think his impact on team offense is so immense with what he does off ball that when he is also giving you that level of production and efficiency on ball as a self-creator, I'd still take him over everybody but Jokic. The difference is Steph doesn't do that every game now like he was a few years ago. We have seen a bit of a drop-off in terms of self-creation, where now in terms of pick and roll isolation efficiency, Steph's basically in the 55th percentile instead of he used to always be in the 95th percentile. Part of that is a little bit of athletic regression, right? Just with him losing a little bit of quickness, really barely getting to the rim at all at this point. Part of it is maybe him not being able to just bear the same physical load in terms of volume over the course of an entire season. But those are my only criticisms of him. That's where I nitpick him and say the top 3 guys are always going to be able to self-create elite offense. They're always going to be able to have that massive volume. But you just think about what he does to defenses. Think about the coverages he's demanding in that Rocket series, and think about the context. Think about the hellish offensive situation he's in, where there's only one other guy who can do anything with the ball in his hands, and that's Jimmy Butler. And even he was never really doing it with volume, and he had injury stuff in the playoffs, and he was up and down. And other than that, there's not a positive offensive player on this roster, Logan. I like Brandon Podziemski. The guy is susceptible to pass up on an open layup, miss a layup worse than you've seen anybody in your life, completely lose his confidence from 3. And, like, that's the next guy who I would look to.
It's actually kind of funny, man, because, like, even you think about the other starters, like Draymond and his limitations. Like, Draymond's one of the greatest defensive players of all time, and he's a great decision-maker offensively.
For sure.
But, like, there's a reason that Draymond is viable in these lineups. It's because of a guy like Steph.
Well, and I will always give Draymond a lot of credit for what he has done offensively, and I do think that there is clearly a positive impact that his ball handling and playmaking has in enabling Steph to do what makes him so great. And Dre's short roll playmaking. Like, if you look throughout Steph's career, the team success, his individual efficiency production, it's all markedly better when Draymond's on the floor with him. But also, like, a Draymond can only have his unique impact because of the totally unique value of Steph Curry. Draymond, in so many other situations offensively, you'd have some big problems. You just have a tougher time trying to find a role for the stuff that he does do well, whereas with Steph, it's so seamless. It's so immediate. It's peanut butter and jelly. And even still, I mean, Draymond is not the offensive player that he was years ago, right? He's regressed in his own right. But anyways, just like the total lack of creation and the total lack of consistent shooting, the total lack of athleticism, the total lack of finishing. I've talked about this before. I saw a graphic that basically graded, like it was a B-ball index graphic, I want to say, the Warriors' offensive proficiency in all these different areas without Steph Curry. And they're an F in everything. And there is one guy who is able to still be so efficient in his own right, so productive in his own right, and most importantly, change everything for the people around him. I started this talking about the Rocket series. It's ridiculous, dude. Like, we are talking about a team that is willing to zone up and yet keep a man attached to Steph at all times. So they weren't running a box and one, but they were running this very janky, totally focused on Steph Curry defense, willing to concede wide open shots to other players. That's a trade-off that, like, you don't take with anybody else. You only take that with Steph Curry, and he still fried them, even being guarded by one of the best defenses in basketball that was so committed to making anybody else beat them. He still fried them. And I mean, he had some incredible volume scoring performances, but even if you look at Game 7, like, he's the one creating all the open shots for his teammates. So that level of impact, to me, nobody else is matching. I love Giannis offensively, but Steph's ability to do that in any matchup across the league just because of his shooting threat, just because of his IQ, just because of his off-ball movement. There's nothing like it. So he's still got to be here for me. I don't know if there are other arguments people would try to use against Steph. I feel like some people are probably underrating him. Like, truly the best thing I can say is watch the games, understand the context, and how he changes everything for this basketball team. And I don't think you can deny that he still belongs in the top 4. If somebody tries to hit in the big 2025 Steph Curry, down the stretch of this year, again, I would say Steph Curry was the second best offensive player on the planet. He's just not as consistent as the guys in my number 2 and number 3 spots. Where I had a hell of a debate, Logan. I really did. Purely offense, who is number 3 for you?
I mean, I think this is going to be controversial, and it's so close between these two guys. I have Shai in my 3 spot, and I have Luka in my 2 spot.
As do I. And that's why I hit the purely offense, because we both have Shai higher as a player.
Agreed.
But
and we're
purely
looking at
offensively, it's so close. I would slightly go Luka, but make your case.
When we're looking at these guys in totality, I do think Shai takes the edge because of the defensive value that he brings. Offensively, I want to be clear about something too. If we were solely, and I know our criteria is different, so maybe this doesn't apply to your case. If we are looking at these guys from last season, obviously, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had a better season than Luka Doncic.
Clearly.
But when I am looking forward to next season, I would take Luka as a purely offensive player. Still, that being said, it is razor thin between both of these guys. And if you want to take Shai for next year, I get it. I love Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he plays a purely sexual brand of basketball. I love watching it. The way he moves, he's like a slinky, man. He's going to get to his spots. He makes it look so easy. He's got phenomenal touch. He has gotten better as a playmaker. When we were looking at it in totality of offense, I do think Luka is the better playmaker. I think he is the second best passer on the planet. I think he has got a strength advantage over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, where when he is striking that balance between downhill and three-point shooting, I think he can impose himself more. And when I'm looking forward to next year, they got me, Carson. I'm biting. I'm biting on the Luka athletic hype train. I think the Mavericks awoke a beast in him. I think he's going to be in the best shape of his life this upcoming year. And so I think that's going to make a meaningful difference to me in terms of stamina. I said it. I think they woke the beast up. I think Shai's beast has been awoken. I think Luka is going to be engaged and impose himself in a different way next season. And so if Luka looks the way he did last year, this upcoming season, I'm going to be pretty quick in this. And I'm going to say Shai, I was wrong. Yeah. Shai should be in my 2 spot. Luka should be back in my 3 spot. And to me, I'll be clear. There's no real debate between if Luka should be in my 3 spot or any lower. I wouldn't consider him any lower. There is a gap to me between my 3 and 4 spots. But purely offensively, I'm buying into Luka being in shape. I think he's a better playmaker, and I just think he's going to look better next year. And so I'm not buying – this is not stock based off of this last season. This is me doing a little bit of projecting into the guy I believe Luka Doncic to be. Yeah. And if we're just going offensively, I do prefer Luka. I think he's the better playmaker, and I think he can impose himself a little bit more than Shai. That being said, I think Shai is a special offensive basketball player, and I would argue that Shai's probably the better all-around scorer than Luka. But in terms of overall offensive ability, I slightly prefer Luka, but I don't think this is going to go over well with the public.
I don't know if that's true. I think this might actually be the consensus side, but I think it's insanely close, and it's so close that I think that there are strong arguments to be made for both sides. Oh, here I go doing the both sides have good people thing again. But it is true. Here's what I'll say. I think the most common argument that you will see laid out for Luka over Shai, people who act like it's comfortable at least, will be what I touched on earlier, right? Viewing offense as some combination of scoring, playmaking, average the two. If you're a 9 out of 10 scorer and you're a 9 out of 10 playmaker, that's better than being a 10 scorer and a 7 playmaker. And again, that's not really how it works, because as good of a scorer as Luka is, and he is a great scorer, I view Shai as clearly a better scorer by a decent margin. And this year he was pretty clearly the best scorer alive. And by the way, I totally agree with what you said about last year. There is no question Shai had a better offensive season. But when I think about my big picture building block for offense, I do slightly prefer Luka. But the reason it is so close is because Shai does have that meaningful scoring advantage to me. His scoring is so incredibly low variance. It is so consistent. It is so matchup proof. And his self-created scoring combination of volume and efficiency is unmatched. I talk about Brunson being second only to him, but Shai just walked into 33 points per game on 64% true shooting. And he did that while producing 18.3 points per game between pick and rolls and isolation, and averaging 1.1 points per possession. That's like better than 90th percentile efficiency in both of them, with easily the biggest volume in basketball. You compare that to even a stud like Luka. Last year, Luka was giving you 0.99 points per pick and roll and isolation combined. That's more like 70th percentile efficiency in 14 points per game. So based on what we saw last year, there's a big scoring gap. I do think Luka will bounce back a bit as a scorer. I think Luka's going to bounce back overall this year, and I think the scoring is definitely a part of that. But even if you take them at their respective bests, I would take Shai last year as a scorer over 2024 Luka or 2023 Luka. I do value so highly his ability to just control the paint at a level that surpasses everybody else in basketball. He's the best driving and finishing guard in the league. I mean, the one of one change of pace, balance, body control, the bag that he has, the footwork, the spins while he's 6'6" with this 7-foot wingspan, and he has this ridiculous, incredible touch and ambidexterity. Like, the guy can get to the rim at an insane volume, and he's going to make 70% of his shots when he gets there. And then he's also the best foul drawing guard in basketball. That's more hyper-efficient offense. He's the best mid-range guard in basketball. You're talking about shooting north of 50% from the mid-range, in the paint, outside the restricted area. Elite in both of those areas. And that's so key, right? The fact that he can do it out of isolation, out of pick and roll. He can do it from the elbows. He can do it from the baseline. He can do it posting up in certain matchups and get to his fadeaway. That's why he's the best scorer in basketball, because he can generate that volume and efficiency against any defense. We saw this. Teams pack the paint, and that's going to have an impact on any player. But Shai's ability to be so effective at getting past you, creating separation, but not having to get to the rim, and I can still create myself a 50% plus shot on an island. Like, there's just so few guys who can do that. Luka, as great as he is, cannot do that.
It leaves you in no man's land perpetually. Like, you were just stuck choosing, I can take away this shot or I can take away that shot, but I can't take away both. And if Shai makes the right pick, you're cooked.
And also, like, any defense in the NBA, if they have to choose, they will concede mid-range shots over anything else. And that is the right decision. But when you can make those mid-range shots at a 50+% clip at high volume, you break the algorithm, because now there's nothing that you can do with that player. And then you consider the fact that Shai shot over 37% from three this regular season. If we see that dimension being a more consistent positive for him in a playoff run, I mean, that's enough to make him the number 2 player on this list if we see that come together. And overall, I do think he's the best isolation scoring guard in basketball. He's the best pick and roll scoring guard in basketball. And when the 3 ball is on, I've called him the most complete on-ball scoring guard that we've ever seen. And I do believe that. So the scoring is so supremely valuable, and Shai protects the ball extraordinarily well. 2.4 turnovers per game. His ability to limit turnovers at the scoring volume he gives you, it is Jordan-esque. That was one of Jordan's superpowers. It's something that they share, and they're in a club of their own, a 2-man club in their ability to do that at this level. So that's where, again, this isn't just a 9-scorer, 9-playmaker over 10-scorer, 7-playmaker, because, I mean, where does that account for your ability to never turn the ball over, never lose possessions for your offense? Like, if you are overwhelmingly great as a self-created scorer, one of the best we've ever seen, in a tier of your own in the NBA right now. He's in a tier above Luka. I read off those numbers to you. And you're so efficient doing it, and you never turn the ball over, And you can bend the defense so much because your scoring threat is so great. And you just create elite team offense because of that. With the ball in your hands, you can do it without having to make a lot of A-plus reads, right? The playmaking bar you have to hit isn't as high because the scoring threat is so overwhelming, because you're taking such exceptional care of the basketball. You're putting the ball in the basket so efficiently, and that's what Shai can do. That's why, even though he's not an elite playmaker, he is an all-time great offensive engine, and his team was more than 9 points per 100 better offensively with him on the floor. So there's that half-court mastery. And then, of course, you have to note, like, he's one of the best transition scorers on the planet. And so we talk about the value of that, getting that easy offense for your team. That's a big edge for him. So it's so damn close, dude. And what I will say is we're giving Luka the benefit of the doubt, and we're anticipating a bounce back, and I think there's good reason for that. But what I would also say is Shai got better this year, and Shai can continue to get better. Shai can become more consistent as a three-point shooter. He can improve more as a playmaker, and actually I think he'll probably do both, especially his playoff run was impressive, but those were the two areas where he was a little up and down. He figured out the playmaking normally as he got deeper into a series, but now that he's seen these coverages, he could be in that form more immediately in the playoffs next year. And he could just shoot 37% from three, because that's what he did in the regular season. And if he does that, which at some point he probably will, like, he could easily be number 2 on this list. I think he easily could be number 2 right now, especially if you're not giving Luka a lot of credit. But I am going to give Luka some credit. And here's why. Last year was a clear down year for him, right? It was the worst season that he's had in a long time. Honestly, I would say that was the worst basketball we've seen from Luka since his rookie season, because starting with year 2, I mean, he was a stamped top 5 player. And last year, I don't know that he was playing at a top 5 level, maybe the 5th best player in basketball. We give him that nod because we know the level that he's established over the years, but it was a down year. That being said, if you look at the last 3 years, he's giving you almost 32 points and 9 assists per game on 61% true shooting. And I do think that 2023 and 2024 were the 2 best seasons we've seen from Luka. I mean, 2023, I think, was just the best all-around offense we've ever got from him. 2024, he wasn't quite getting the same level of downhill scoring, but it was the best 3-point shooting season that we've seen from him. And so we'll see, right, where he strikes the balance between those two things. I think those are 2 of the key swing factors for him. Can he shoot the ball at a 2024 level? Can he get back to getting to the rim, not at his peak levels, but more than he has these last 2 seasons? But the reasons I think there are some good indicators for a Luka bounce back. Number 1, I do think he's in significantly better shape. It's not now that I think that Luka is the most shredded, most athletic, sexiest basketball player on the planet. It's last year the fella was pudgy and the fella was out of shape and the fella had been kind of in and out of the lineup with some injury stuff. He clearly looks better physically. We're seeing him play high leverage basketball in Eurobasket. He torched everybody. 35, 9, and 8 on 65% true shooting. Like, don't want to overreact to that, right? It's different competition. It's small sample size. He was wildly impressive, though. Secondly, he's going to have an actual pick and roll finishing big now. That's significant for Luka, who is this pick and roll master, who is this incredible pick and roll passer, feeding lob passes to his bigs. Having that sort of vertical spacer matters because this year, right, you go up against the Timberwolves and, I mean, you don't have a semblance of a play finishing big. You don't have a playable center. So you get in this situation where they're switching everything against you, which would have been the most effective coverage no matter what. But Luka wasn't at his peak level we expect from him as a scorer, and it was just not his normal level of offensive impact in that series. Not his peak scoring and not nearly his peak playmaking impact. I think that if you give him a full season with a pick and roll finishing big like DeAndre Ayton, who can get above the rim, who's very good with some of those short range touch shots, that is a complementary player for his game offensively. And I think that that will make his life a little bit easier. And then I also just think he's going to have a full healthy season, build rhythm, get back to that peak level. These are all the reasons I'm optimistic with Luka. The one thing, though, that I always flag, that I do not think we can just count as a given, is the diminished driving and rim pressure that we've seen from him, which has been trending down over the years, right? You compare this past season to 2023, he's lost like 40% of his rim volume. He's going from like 5 restricted area attempts a game to 3. He's going from above average rim volume for a guard to 23rd percentile. That matters because that makes him more reliant on the pull-up shooting. That means that he's not getting by people as much. He's not getting deep into the teeth of the defense for scoring and playmaking opportunities. And that's where I was critical of him all year. And that's not something that just goes away necessarily because he's in better shape. But being in better shape should help him get back at least a bit of that driving ability. And then that with the pull-up shooting, with the supercomputer processing playmaking is the reason that I'll take Luka. I know that I laid out this whole thing about, your offensive value isn't just scoring plus playmaking. But at the end of the day, I do think that the playmaking advantage for Luka is better than the overall scoring value that Shai has. Even though it is close, Luka's one of the best passers that we've ever seen. And his body of work that we've seen over the last 5 years, not just last year, is great enough for me to be optimistic about his offense and say he's still the second best offensive player in basketball.
Yeah, and I still feel like Shai's floor is probably higher, but I do think Luka's ceiling as an offensive engine is higher. And I completely agree with the point that you made about his conditioning. He looks quicker, and he looks like he's in better shape in Eurobasket, and that makes a meaningful difference to me because I just think stamina-wise, if you've played basketball, it takes a toll. All that dribbling, all that getting downhill, your body hurts. It's just hard to do that, and I think you see that as a track record with players. It's not exclusive to Luka, just like even some of the athletic guys in the league today. It's just easier on your body settling for those jumpers, and I agree with you. I think that is what is going to determine how great he is as an offensive engine and how good he is this next year. And to me, it's not even just getting all the way downhill to the rim. It's
paint touches,
attacking mismatches, and just backing guys down and getting to those post looks. And I think back to the run when they got to the finals against Boston, that was the difference to me. And obviously the Lakers team last year, I was wrong. I thought that team was going to be built for contention and making maybe even a Western Conference Finals run. They weren't. And I don't think they're going to be there this year. I don't think that they can do anything in their power to build this team up to be super competitive. But I think Luka individually can be better and closer to what he was during that run and just imposing himself more. If he comes out and he's settling for a bunch of jumpers and stuff like that, I'll put my hand up and I'll say, all right, I got a red flag. I think Shai's going to be better than next year. But I think last year was an aberration. I think last year was the exception to the rule. I think Luka is going to bounce back and be the Luka that we expect him to be next year. Who knows? If you were a Shai guy, I could see Shai just outplaying him next year and taking the throne. That is completely on the table because of the caliber of basketball player that Shai is. But I think Luka's going to bounce back, and I think he's going to bounce back in a big way. And I'm betting on that. So, hair. I could take hair margin. I ain't got none on my head. You do, but it's super close between these two. But I'm betting on Luka looking a lot better, and I'm just optimistic, man. I didn't like seeing Luka pudgy. I didn't like seeing him get clowned on. I think it is the worst basketball that we've seen him play. Since he reached that level, I think last year was the worst year of his career since he hit superstar status. So I'm betting on him bouncing back.
Well, look, it's on him to bounce back. I agree. It's not fun to see, obviously. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of his issues were self-imposed. So we'll see. I'm also optimistic for a bounce back. What's crazy is these guys are both so great, and they both still have clear opportunities to get better. Pretty crazy. All this being said, you're talking about battling for the crown. This is ultimately the hypothetical crown of second best offensive player on the planet in the Nerd Sesh rankings. I do still think I need to see Luka not be detrimental to his team's defense in a high-stakes, high-leverage spot because the last two playoff series from him defensively have been disastrous, whereas we know that Shai is
making plays in Eurobasket, though, man.
I saw a Eurobasket cut-up of Luka is a lockdown defender or something like that, and I was like, all right, Eurobasket tax. Let's be honest. We're not looking at NBA athletes out there. Let's talk about the GOAT, Logan. Nikola Jokic is number one on this list yet again. This is, oh boy, how many years has he held this title? Quite a few. I guess 2021 is the last time that there was a good case that somebody else made.
With Embiid?
Steph Curry.
Oh.
No, just Steph Curry being an absolute god that season. Even that year, Glazer like me, I probably would have slightly taken Jokic. But he's had this crown for quite a while now. I think he's still clearly got it. Why is that?
I do too. I mean, some of the analytical numbers with Jokic just don't make any sense. And some people push back with how bad the Nuggets supporting cast is, yada, yada, whatever, man. With Jokic, this team has an offensive rating of 127.7. Without him, they have an offensive rating of 106.8. The difference is 19.9 points per 100 possessions. That's just
like
offensively.
to me.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
He improves the Nuggets' three-point percentage by 5.6% with him on the court. He improves their true shooting percentage by 8.8%. I've never seen a number like that. I feel like anytime I look at a Jokic analytics page, I see a number that I've never seen before with him. And I don't want to just boil it down to scoring and playmaking, but it is a combination that I feel like we've never seen before because there are other factors, the gravity, his ability to draw double teams from basically anywhere on the court because in single coverage you're probably just going to get cooked. How he warps the defense as a pick-and-roll roll man, but also as the pick-and-roll ball handler. There's so many little things that Jokic does. You always said it, man, even back before people realized what Jokic was. The chess piece, that you can put him anywhere he's the queen, man. You put him anywhere on the board, and he warps the opposing team's defensive coverage. He just changes everything. The physical imposition, the fact that you can't guard him in single coverage, the efficiency across basically all play types. There's not a good answer for Nikola Jokic, and there still isn't. And I thought the Thunder, I want to give them a ton of credit. I thought this was the best we've ever seen Jokic defended with all of their great defenders up and down their roster, but specifically Alex Caruso and how he was able to defend him in single coverage. The ability of Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein on the back line to defend him. I thought they did a phenomenal job. That being said, I think that is I think it's an anomaly. I think that is the one defense in basketball that could really disrupt and defend him like that. Everybody else across the league was getting destroyed by Jokic, and he makes all of his teammates better. He is basically unguardable in single coverage. I mean, I think we talked about it. The best guy that could guard him one-on-one was who? Big Zoo.
Yeah. It's definitely
and
Zoo. That's why he ran into his two toughest matchups in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He ran into the best individual defender to guard him and the best team to guard him.
And what I think is even crazier about this year is I think the offense is going to look even better with the additions that they've made. Mm-hmm. The fact that they have even more shooting on the wings, the fact that they have a guy like Cam Johnson, who is just brilliant as a basketball player and is going to be such a great compliment to Jokic as an off-ball relocator and shooter, as a cutter off ball. Shout out MPJ. MPJ's a weapon as a shooter, but Cam is going to take this offense up another notch. Yeah, this wasn't a debate. Jokic is going to take home number one.
Yeah.
I don't think it's particularly close.
It's not close, and it feels like I've gotten so used to having to make this argument and go on my 10-minute monologues, and it feels like at this point there's pretty much no pushback. And so it's kind of like, what do I do with myself? I don't know. So many years of glazing, so meticulously mastered down to a science.
You fought.
Now it's just everybody.
No, you fought the good fight. You won.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm still going to lay out the numbers because they are so ridiculous. And by the way, the on-off stuff, right? I mean, him improving his offense by 20 points per 100 possessions. Obviously, you're not seeing a number like that from anybody else. You've basically never seen a number like that in NBA history. I do think that is literally the biggest single-season number in league history on record. And people can talk about, but their backup centers suck. Their bench sucks. Okay, sure. When he is on the court purely, though, his team has a much better offensive rating than anybody else in basketball, than any of these other great players' teams when they're on the court. I didn't pull all the numbers today because, again, I don't think I need to go into my full deep dive breakdown mode, but it is insane. Maybe we should pull them up, Logan, just for shits and giggles right now. The numbers that he does put up for his team's offense when he's on the court without Jamal Murray, 124 offensive rating when they're together, a 130 offensive rating. Without Aaron Gordon, a 127 offensive rating. Like, it's stupid, man. You take his best teammates off the floor, and he's still producing the best team offensive results in terms of raw offensive rating in the history of this sport. So it's all there. It's very plain to see. 30 points per game, 10 assists per game, 3 offensive rebounds per game, 66% true shooting. The impact stuff is unmatched. This season, Logan, he shot 72% in the restricted area, 57% in the paint outside the restricted area, 52% from mid-range, 42% from 3, and we all know with the new heave rules, it's actually over 44% from 3. It's unbelievable efficiency across the board, and the same goes for across play types. Best post scorer in the NBA, 83rd percentile roll man, where he's got that ridiculous ability with the insane floater touch to make 60% of those shots off the short roll. Obviously, his brilliant playmaking off the short roll, and then he's also able to pop and make 40+% of his threes. 84th percentile pick and roll ball handler. Incredible running inverted pick and roll. His ability to, if he draws a switch, abuse mismatches, if they hedge, pick you apart with his playmaking, like whatever the coverage, he is going to destroy you like that as well. 90th percentile spot up player, just an elite jump shooter this year. 78th percentile off screens, he can do it off movement. 73rd percentile as a cutter, has the best feel of any big in basketball in terms of what he does away from the ball. Punishing overplays, getting back cuts, like just constantly moving. He has such absurd scoring versatility, and then he's also the best passer on the planet. There's just no question. If you put together all the components of what I want from my best offensive player in the league, I want unstoppable scoring value. Well, he brings me that with his post game, where he's 300 pounds, he's got unbelievable footwork and craft, and he's got the best touch that we've ever seen in the paint. So he's going to create ridiculously efficient offense like that. I want versatile scoring. We already laid out all the ways in which he excels there. I want elite individual efficiency. Well, I already laid all that out. He is one of the greatest passers that we've ever seen. And so when it comes to on-ball value, off-ball value, scoring, playmaking, nobody's better across the board. And then you just get to like the fundamental way that he plays basketball, and this is interrelated with the supreme versatility, but all the little things that he can do to impact the game, right? Getting off the ball, making quick decisions, doing these things that just maximize the flow of his offense and truly create the best opportunities for all of his teammates to thrive. He's the best. Elite screening. That's value nobody else on this list brings. Elite offensive rebounding. That's value nobody else on this list brings. Like, just the overall most versatile play style when it comes to elevating team offense. Nobody's better in all these ways.
Sorry, just a little very minute detail to add. The fact that he plays the center position and can routinely either draw the big man out to create cutting lanes on the backside or, you know, it creates this decision that the center has to make, or he closes out on Jokic opening that up, or he stays home and Jokic is a over 40% three-point shooter where it's an easy look. Like, because he plays center too, it changes the geometry for the entire defense as well.
I mean, it's a great point with the spacing. Fundamentally, I would say his ability to do everything that he's doing as a center is why this isn't a conversation. Having the level of perimeter skill that he does have, where he can run inverted pick and roll, where he is such a great jump shooter, where he is such an off-ball mover and scorer. And then he's also this utterly dominant interior force, scoring and playmaking off that defensive attention. And then he does the elite big man shit, like the screening and offensive rebounding. There's just no conversation here. I really don't think there is, and I don't see a way that anybody catches Jokic when it comes to pure offensive value in the league today. The gap is significant in terms of all-around value impact, and if you look at his playoff performance, last 4 years, he averages 29, 13, and 9 on 62% true shooting. So it's really no argument. He's clearly been the best there as well. He increases his scoring volume. Just an absolute monster. I think the best offensive player to ever play the game. And that's a conversation. Who's the best offensive player in the game today, though? That is not a conversation. It's Nikola Jokic.
You know, Carson, sometimes we do these lists and I feel like I was wrong. I feel like maybe I should have made some adjustments.
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty confident about this one, man,
I'm
after
glad,
we talked it all out.
I'm glad. Yeah, the Hallie versus Ant one is maybe the toughest for me. LeBron versus Zion, that's still a tough one. Shai versus Luka, very, very close. But ultimately, you know what, Logan, if you feel good, I feel good, man. I'm glad we did this. This was a lot of fun. We don't often just isolate offense like that, at least not in a full list, because we isolate defense. You get a lot of, like, specialists maybe in that, but offense is just so, like, tied in with value. Like, just generally the best players in the league are very good offensive players, at the least, if not just the best offensive players in basketball. But it is different, Logan, between all these guys. You know, there's differences that can be subtle, and it's fun to sort of pick them apart and parse them all out. How about that?
Maybe offensive peaks or defensive peaks could be an interesting episode
Logan,
if the people are interested down the
don't
road.
you dare threaten me with a good time, because we're doing that at some point. You better believe it, and that's going to be a whole lot of fun. Oh, there's nothing I love more than opening up that old history vault and just diving deep, Logan. You know, I love being submerged in some old basketball analysis. Don't get dirty and don't get
No.
nasty
You
with me
cleaned it
now.
up. You cleaned it. I was a little worried. The direction you were taking that.
Logan, I'm a clean,
You did good.
good, decent American. All right? So you got to stop assuming the worst. We appreciate you guys, as always, for listening along, and we hope that you enjoyed. If you want more of our stuff, it's all across our YouTube channel. Logan mentioned it. I did get a video up yesterday talking about the aesthetics bias in basketball. Aesthetics are an illusion, says the title. So go ahead and check that out if you want. I want to be more consistent with that video essay content. We're just so dang busy, Logan, but that's some of my favorite stuff that I do. So hope you guys check that one out and enjoy. Of course, all the full-length episodes are here on YouTube. All of our trivia stuff, NBA, NFL. We will be back Sunday night, and you can find it all across all audio platforms as well. If you don't want to look at our ugly mugs and you just want to listen to the pod, social, Instagram, TikTok, @NerdSesh, Twitter, @Nerd_Sesh. And you can join our Discord if you want to chat with the gang. That is linked at the link tree across our social media bios. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.